The TV. TV.
There's a.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Again, welcome. This is a special meeting of Monday, August 6th, 6 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Councilor Arnone.
Here.
Councilor Bosco.
Here.
Councilor Sakala.
Here.
Councilor Crissati. Councilor Davis. Councilor Denny.
Here.
Councilor Falk.
Here.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Councilor Muller.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Here.
Councilor Ungary.
Here.
There's 9 members present, 2 are absent.
So item number 2, the Novak Consulting Group. Chris, just real quick for the public, real quick, brief background. Brief background, and we'll turn it over.
Good evening. This is these are the representatives from the Novak Consulting Group who did perform the management study at the Public Works Department over the last several months. I wasn't here for the beginning of it, only the end. They're going to introduce themselves. They've come today to make a presentation. They also have the report. We didn't disseminate the report to anyone other than initially pursuant to their standards, and they will explain this to Public Works individuals for accuracy of information only, not to edit content or anything substantive. And ultimately, that report's available as well with the final report. We didn't disseminate it based on their recommendation because it is their custom, and what they've learned over time is let everybody, all the stakeholders, hear the results at the same time. You commissioned the report. It affects all the public works, but it also is paid for by our residents so that they find, to avoid confusion, present a report like this. Everybody hears it at once. Then you can ask questions. We'll have time to digest it. And again, remember, it's a recommendation. It's subject to council review. What portions that you believe within our budget or for other reasons taken together with our entire organization that you would like to implement. So it isn't mandatory, it's advisory. But I think it's a step in the right direction to have somebody from outside come in and look at a big operation like Public Works from time to time and let you know what they think because they have experience all across the Northeast and the country. So without further ado, what we did is they're going to do the presentation. They're going to hand out a copy of the presentation to you so you can follow along. The report, they just made copies of this afternoon that Jonathan made for them. I have not seen it. And then we'll disseminate that at the end of the report for everybody in the audience and for the council themselves.
Okay. Thank you. Just your name and your title, and welcome. Welcome. Thank you.
I assume everyone can hear me okay?
Is red button on? You're good.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
Yeah, we're good to go. Thank you.
Do we have a copy for the audience?
He just explained.
The same that you're seeing right there.
It's not a public hearing, so
it's not the report, Doug. This is their presentation. They're just going to have a paper copy. It's here, and that's available after too.
All right, so my question is,
we're not going to go back and forth, Doug. This is the presentation. They have a copy of it to follow along. You can watch there. People
why don't I have a copy? I'm the president of the union. Why don't I have a copy to follow this over?
Because it's going to be right there, Doug. Well, they didn't make it. That's not the process. There was no subterfuge or conspiracy involved. That's how they determined they would go forward. So please proceed, Mr. Ingram.
Okay.
Watch your mouth. You'll be removed, Doug. Be civil. Go ahead, sir.
Okay.
I didn't swear, Doug. I am being civil.
Now there are two types of presentation. I apologize. I didn't print enough, so they're all the same. They're just some of them have 2 slides, some of them have 1 at a time. So they're all the same. Yes, sir.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I had a miscount.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you all for taking a little time out this evening to sit with us and review the results of our assessment of the Public Works.
Excuse me, Gina. Are there extras?
There are
Doug,
plenty of extras.
if you'd like to take them, go ahead. Yes. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Doug.
Okay. All right. No problem. Please. Thank you.
Again, I apologize for that.
No worries. Let's go.
Me too,
Go ahead,
Doug.
gentlemen.
Okay. My name is Jonathan Ingram with the Novak Consulting Group. I was the project manager on this engagement. The Novak Consulting Group is a local government consulting firm. We work exclusively with city and county governments across the United States and occasionally overseas with focus on operations, financial management, executive recruitment, as well as strategic planning. We were brought in by the town I guess it was cold whenever I was here, whenever we kicked off the project. So we've been working over the past several months to complete a thorough review of the Public Works Department. Again, I was the project manager on the project. We had a number of other individuals working with us. I'll let my colleague Ron Norris introduce himself as well, and then we'll get into some of the content of the presentation.
My name is Ron Norris, and I'm a subject matter expert with NOVAC. I work part-time with NOVAC. I'm retired as a public works official. Really, for about 42 years, I was active public works official and past president of the American Public Works Association, the National American Public Works Association, and the National Association of State Facility Administrators. For about 8 years, I was.
Mr. Mayor, can you folks hear him?
Barely.
Barely.
I know, I can't hear him here.
Sorry.
A little better.
Let's try again.
There you
Okay.
go.
I will try to do better. I apologize. As I was saying, I was past president of the National Association of State Facility Administrators, and I'm running out of breath. I have one lung that's not operating at all. So anyway, which is new, but let's see, yeah.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, thanks.
So just to kind of give you a high level of what we want to cover today, we'll give you a quick overview of what our project purpose was, what were our marching orders, what were our marching orders going forward. We'll review our key observations and recommendations in a number of key areas: leadership and management, work planning and tracking. We'll look at staffing levels in each of the major units and share our recommendations with respect to those areas. Some of the operation improvements as well as internal services, and then give you all an opportunity to ask questions and answers. Just to kind of give you an overview of the process, we were tasked with really looking at public works from top to bottom. Think of it a bit as a doctor's checkup. Our role was to come in and take a look at how operations functioned, what was working well, what wasn't working well from the perspective of employees in each strata of the organization, and also conduct really very detailed workload-based analysis of each of the operating units within public works to determine where are the gaps in service level expectations, where are the gaps in terms of what folks are tasked with completing. Are there more efficient ways to generate staff capacity to increase the number of hours that staff are available to focus on work without necessarily adding personnel, but to also pay very close attention to the question of how many personnel are actually needed based on the workload that you all are facing, based on the conditions of your assets and infrastructure, and to tee up really for you all as elected officials the key policy questions that you all have to wrestle with. Where are their needs? Where are there opportunities to shift focus of resources to generate additional capacity? But what are the areas of investment that you all are going to have to really consider as you evaluate what your revenue and expenditure decisions are going forward? Our process was extensive. We have both quantitative and qualitative approaches to our work. We conducted more than 20 individual interviews. We interviewed in a one-on-one basis each of the department managers and supervisors. We also met with union leadership with the various unions and interviewed key stakeholders throughout the town. One of the things that we also did was hold a number of focus groups with frontline employees. One of the things that's important to us is to make sure that we speak to each level of the organization and get their perspective on what is working well and what is not, so that we can create really constructive solutions that touch every area of the organization. We toured the facility and the community. Really, it's important for us to understand the context of the community, what are the conditions that you all are working with, and sort of put an image to the things that we're reading in spreadsheets and in policy documents and things like that. So we went through a process of conducting that field work, and then we pulled back and started putting our heads together as a team to figure out the areas of focus and research and analysis, and we submitted a data request to the town. The town, it was an extensive data request. It took several weeks to complete. We took that data, completed workload-based analysis, and developed a series of recommendations as well as a preliminary draft report. We offered 27 recommendations for improvement. We're not going to review every single recommendation with you all today. You'll have an opportunity to read the report. We'll leave several copies of the report with you, and we've provided an electronic copy on a thumb drive that we'll provide to your town manager as well, so that you can review it electronically, distribute it as you see fit. But we want to hit the key recommendations, those things that really are important to you all to consider and things to take into account as elected officials. We're not going to get into really detailed operating minutia that's sort of at the supervisory responsibility, but if you have questions about those sort of things as you review the report, we're certainly available to answering those questions. So once we sort of provided a preliminary draft report, the purpose of that process was to verify factual accuracy. One of the things that can happen as we review extensive amounts of data, we want to make sure that we've interpreted it correctly and haven't crossed a T whenever, identified a T when it was an I, right? So we went through a process of verifying that data and went through that process of review with the department. No changes made to the recommendations, no substantive adjustments in that respect. So, which reflects kind of the nature of our process. We went back and finalized the project report, which we have for you today. And again, we'll present the key themes and recommendations going forward, and again, review any concerns you have, questions and answers you may have. So jumping right into the key observations and recommendations. Just a few general observations that I just would like to make about kind of the Department of Public Works and town employees. One of the things we found is that employees are really very dedicated to providing high quality services. Many of the employees within the town work within the town. They're actually customers as well as service providers, which is an interesting perspective. There are a lot of very tight relationships between individuals in the department and individuals in the community. And what that means is that there are sort of channels of communication that allow customer service complaints to get resolved quickly. And one of the things that has evolved as a cultural characteristic of the department is those customer service requests take priority, frankly, sometimes to the detriment of the department. One of the things that you will see in our review is that there's really a need to bend the focus of the department to focus more on preventative and proactive maintenance, those things that have a significant, long-lasting dollar impact and value on the infrastructure of the community. But you also still have to maintain that ability to respond quickly to customer service requests, right? So we've tried to offer a series of recommendations that really allow you to accomplish those two tasks. One of the things that we also found is that there is a genuine desire among Public Works employees to have a stronger connection with management. There are a number of challenges with the existing management structure that we'll speak to in a moment, and we've offered some recommendations in terms of reorganization at the management level to really position the department to really focus on preventative maintenance, generate some of that specialization and focus, but also made some recommendations to really create structure around how management engages with employees and how issues are resolved in that area. The major takeaway, though, before we jump in, is there's really a need to bend away from complaint-driven work and focus on proactive preventative maintenance. Most of our recommendations are tied together in a sense to give the department that capacity. It's going to require some time to implement those recommendations. It's going to require some time to change that shift, and it's also going to require some investment. Okay, just key things to keep in mind as we dive in. We will discuss the sort of leadership and management structure recommendations first, and then dive into some of our staffing recommendations. So this is just a quick graphic that illustrates the point that I was making. So this is called an urgency importance matrix, and what we find is that many of the activities that are performed by crews on a day-to-day basis tend to focus on those things that have a high level of urgency, and those things that have a high level of urgency are those things that don't necessarily contribute in a long-lasting way to the quality of the infrastructure. They address customer service challenges for sure, but really we want to again bend to focus on those important activities to really provide a positive impact going forward. With that, I'll turn it over to Ron to talk about some leadership and management questions.
We hope so. So, one of the things that is an absolute truth is that a strength carried to extreme becomes a weakness, and your department is extremely responsive to the public and their needs and their wants. But that then can become a weakness, as when Jonathan said, you aren't doing the preventive things. It gets in the way of those system kinds of activities and work that is needed in order to maintain on a routine basis that infrastructure that is extremely expensive, bought and paid for by previous taxpayers, but needs to be maintained throughout its life and then renewed. And how do you know how to maintain it, when to maintain it, when to renew it? And the only way really you can do that is to measure. And there needs to be an organizational structure that's established that can enable those measurements to take place. And right now, almost all the focus is on taking care of today's problems today. And I think what we have recommended is a long-term asset management plan. How do you do that? You have to know what assets are there. You have to inventory the assets. You have to know what's there. You have to know what condition they're in. You have to know how quickly they will deteriorate. There's something called a deterioration curve. That you have to know where that asset is along that deterioration curve and what it will take then to renew that asset to a different point, and then it will continue to deteriorate. It'll start to deteriorate again. So you can't turn your back on an asset that's new or even renovated, because it will continue to deteriorate, and you have to have that predictive capability. You also have to know what are the consequences of failure of a particular asset. A sewer line that's in the ground, if it collapses at one location, it'll affect a couple of houses, 2 or 3 houses. A sewer line that collapses in front of a hospital has a whole different impact. So it's consequences of failure. Right now, management is routinely pulled in to the daily operational issues, and it makes it very difficult to put that long-range plan in place and to have that big picture in front of you and of the department. One of the things that we're recommending is to reclassify an assistant director position as a deputy director with operations, for operations, and consolidate all operations functions under that position. That would include facilities management, your buildings and grounds, highway maintenance, refuse and resource management, fleet, and water pollution control. Those are the major operating components. And that would be under an assistant director position. And the reason for that is these things are related in many ways. They not only have cross relationships in the field, but they also have cross relationships in terms of measurements and knowing where what the condition of those assets are. And those systems need to be put in place, and you need to have someone that is there on the operating side that's knowledgeable, completely knowledgeable about public works, and can put those systems in place and make sure that those systems are followed. You can, one of the things that I have always had a problem with is having systems put in place and then neglecting them. And that becomes a waste. A system needs to be put in place and kept alive and vital, and the numbers current throughout. Otherwise, it's of no use, and you've wasted a lot of money to get to that point. So that's probably one of the most important recommendations we have, is to create an operations section. Let's go on. And then also reclassify a deputy director as a deputy director of capital projects and administration. Right now, there is no one person that's in charge of capital projects per se, the planning, administration of capital projects. And this has to relate, this is where that relationship between that position and the operations position and the director becomes so critical, because the capital component, a lot of that capital component will be maintenance by capital investment. And so there needs to be that relationship established.
And I will also say there's one other reclassification to be considered really over about a 1 to 2 year.
Turn the mics, I'm sorry.
There's one other reclassification that should be considered over about a 2-year period. As we sort of summarize in this org chart, you'll see that there's a facilities manager position. That's an existing position. As Ron has described, one of the key things that we are looking to create is a long-term asset management program, an individual within the department who is responsible for monitoring and understanding the condition of assets and transferring that information into day-to-day work plans of each of your crews. Over about a 2-year period, we would envision reclassifying that facilities manager position into an asset manager position. In the meantime, that facility manager position ought to be tasked with really developing a more robust database of facility condition, infrastructure, and preventative maintenance plans. So really building some of the baseline that would feed into that asset management program. So ultimately, this org chart that you see before you will get a bit more consolidated. Those building and crowns and custodial folks would report directly to the Deputy Director of Operations, and that facility manager would move on as an asset manager position. But it's got to be a phased approach. Again, this is a long-term change in the approach of the organization, but just something I wanted to highlight before we moved on.
Yeah, developing an asset management plan, an asset management database. I'm sorry.
This is the microphone's part of the.
And developing an asset management database is a fairly sophisticated effort. And as I described, in terms of not just knowing what's there, but what condition it's in and how quickly it'll deteriorate, that becomes a very difficult and kind of a complex process. So it'll take a couple of years to get people up to speed and get a system up to speed in order to do that. Whenever all of this happens, there will be naturally, and I think there's naturally going to be some break between where the director level is and where the worker level is. And that's where it becomes very important to be very intentional about making sure those relationships are healthy, in place, make sure that there are enough field appearances, make sure that there's quarterly access meetings, make sure that there's an open door policy, and sometimes, and in this case, it's just the physical barrier that's in place that makes it very difficult to have that open door atmosphere. And so there needs to be I think a pretty simple construction project to open the door. Adopt structured communication processes so that there is a ongoing communication. You have division meetings, you have one-on-ones, and you follow those up. They are structured with agendas and have a specific purpose in mind, so that there is that relationship that develops from the top to the bottom of the organization.
So one of the things that Ron mentioned is discussing are really important. What we're talking about is a structured performance management system that's consistent from every level of the organization. Every supervisor has an expectation to meet with their employees and cover a certain criteria. Operational issues, financial issues, impact, customer service issues, and all of those things should be communicated on a routine basis and elevated up so that you as elected officials have access in a consistent way to the information that you need. And every manager at every level of the organization has access to what they need going forward. So that performance management system, we talk about some structural changes in what the management structure looks like. All that doesn't really matter if you don't implement these structural improvements in some of the processes. So what are the tools that are really necessary in order to get to that place? One of the things that we really see as critically important is that work plans, annual work plans for preventative maintenance be completed for each one of the units within the Department of Public Works that set really clear expectations about what is to be accomplished and why, and how that integrates into the capital planning process. We've recommended implementing asset management and work order systems. Right now, Public Works has access to a work order module through the Munis financial system. Munis is a financial system. It's not It's not a very useful work order planning tool. So we've recommended that a work order system be implemented. That work order system should be preloaded with all of the preventative maintenance work plans that we've talked about establishing, and it should be used by every single work crew to track the work that they are doing, the amount of time they're spending on key activities, so that that data is available to inform a data-based asset management plan. That's critical, right? And we've also recommended a service request system that integrates into that work order system. So part of one of the things that we sort of ran into, this was largely focused on determining what staffing needs are, right? There's not a whole lot of data available outside of Fleet, which has a fairly functional work order system. There's not a whole lot of data available that really can depict what's going on in the crew, at the crew level, what's really driving work. So we had to go through a qualitative process, which I'll touch on to get there. There's really a need to build those systems and to use those systems, as Ron said. Let's not purchase it and put it on a shelf and not use it. You got to train people on how to use it, and again, that's going to take some time, right? So we've also, made some recommendations that part of developing this performance management system and setting work plans, setting expectations about what activities should be completed from both frontline workers, supervisors, managers to the director himself or herself, is to begin conducting performance evaluations on an annual basis in Public Works. It's a kind of a best practice recommendation we would recommend going forward with that would integrate into that process. So with that, I'll kind of jump in. Those are some of the high-level sort of leadership and management recommendations. I'll jump into some of the staffing and operations items in each one of the units. As I mentioned, our approach to analyzing staffing has a few characteristics to it. We try to get as much workload data as we can from work order systems. Wasn't a whole lot of that available. We spent time talking to all those folks that I discussed, all those folks that we had conversations with at the line level, to really get a feel. What's your day-to-day look like? What are the seasonal things that impact your work? How long is it taking crews to complete work? What's the work schedule? Where are the constraints that you all bump against? So you learned that information in a conversational way and then sought to verify it with workload data to really develop an estimate of what are your workload drivers, what are the things that are really pushing your workload. We also compared that information to best practices that are available. So there are a number of international organizations, American Public Works Association, of which Ron was once the chair. International Facility Management Association has excellent guidelines for custodial services and facilities maintenance work. So we compared our estimates to that data to determine, okay, where are the sort of rubbing points. And we also looked at your contracted services expenditures and overtime usage to see, okay, what are those drivers and things that are impacting your work. So fairly exhaustive process to sort of analyze the staffing levels. At a high level, I would say the department appears to be adequately staffed to meet service level expectations, but there's a really important caveat there. Some of your service level expectations are insufficient to maintain your assets. Okay, so there's going to be a need some focus. There's clear needs in some areas to add additional personnel. We've made some recommendations to shift how personnel are deployed to gain hours in the week and then be able to use those hours to focus on core activities. So we haven't recommended eliminating any personnel. We've recommended converting some positions from part-time to full-time, and we have recommended the addition of some positions, especially in the facilities technician area. That's a really critical area for the town, but we've recommended some structural changes as well, again, to generate some capacity. One of the really important recommendations that will allow the town to bend toward a more preventative maintenance and proactive work planning focus, but still maintain some ability to respond quickly to customer issues and emergency issues, is to expand the cross-training of employees to support highway building and grounds maintenance and create a complete response team. One of the things that we did is we looked at the workload on Monday through Friday seasonally for each one of the crews to determine where are your peaks and where are your valleys. So Public Works is by nature nature seasonal work. Some periods you're going to be busier than others. So what we've tried to do is make some recommendations for how cross-training can occur so that that workload balances out and ultimately you generate more capacity. So that impacts a couple recommendations in resource management, but fundamentally what we would recommend is expanding some of that cross-training to have a labor pool to where you can have a complaint response team of 2 to 3 personnel, 2 or 3 days a week, who can do nothing but respond to those customer service issues, right? They can be there on the spot addressing issues, allowing the other crews to quit fielding those calls on a day-in-day-out basis and focus on that preventative maintenance work. So how can we shift focus to accomplish both of those tasks concurrently? We looked at custodial services. This was a fairly extensive analysis of all of the square footage and cleaning requirements as well as hours of operation. You know, one of the key questions I think that we were tasked with answering was, is the balance of full-time and part-time custodial positions the right balance? And fundamentally our recommendation is that the 11 part-time custodial positions be converted to 3 full-time, and that will basically get you where you need according to best practice guidelines and to be able to meet your custodial services workload. It also, we think, will generate some cost savings. One of the realities with part-time personnel is there's high turnover. There is a high absenteeism as well, often among part-time employees. And we, by filling those positions with part-time employees, we expect overtime to decrease, and we actually would expect some cost savings associated with that recommendation. That's something worth considering. On the building maintenance side, this is an area, probably the area of the most need that we saw within the Department of Public Works. You all have an exceptional number and square footage of facilities, an exceptional variety of facilities that need to be maintained. But one of the obstacles that we ran into in trying to evaluate the staffing needs in this area is there really is just not much data available in terms of what's the condition of the facilities, what are the maintenance requirements, how frequently should HVAC PM be completed on each facility, and how do you schedule that? So there's a gap in the amount of information that's available. So earlier when I referenced the facility manager position, focusing on building that inventory over the next 2 years before you convert to an asset manager position, that's really what this is about. So it was difficult for us it's clear to us that there's likely a fairly significant staffing need in the building technician area. So those folks in building trades with the skills to maintain the facilities that you have. Currently there's 6 building technicians. There are a number of other folks who are responsible for grounds maintenance, but there's 6 technicians. We're recommending adding 4 technicians initially, an HVAC, a plumber, an electrician, and a carpenter to build your building trade skill sets. But we're also recommending that you do that in a phased basis, and that before you add those positions, you will first identify those work plans that I referenced. You'll have some clarity around what those expectations are. And at that point, as you develop your work order system, as you track what your needs are and your infrastructure condition and how that changes over time, you potentially evaluate adding additional personnel going forward. You all have, I cannot stress this enough, you have a lot of square feet to maintain and some significant facility condition issues that need to be addressed. So this is a critical area going forward. Those 4 technician positions, again, would cost about $340,000 based on salary and benefit estimates from our work. On the fleet management side, again, this is fleet is one of the areas where there is a clear there is a work order system in place. So there is more data than some of the other divisions. Right now, the unit is staffed with 2 lead mechanics and 4 mechanics. We calculated the amount of labor hours that are required to maintain each of the vehicles, and we made adjustments based on the type of vehicle. So a dump truck requires a different type of service than a passenger sedan. Correct. So we developed what's called a VEU calculation to determine what your staffing needs are. And really, you're staffed about right, but there is a little bit of capacity, but there's also a fairly significant need and an opportunity to generate some efficiency. So we've recommended converting one of the mechanic positions into a parts manager position to free up admin time from the mechanics, allow them to focus and have really what we would call higher labor rates, a higher amount of time dedicated to wrench work. And we've also made some suggestions on how the fleet manager position would take a more direct role to absorb some of the responsibilities, the sort of management and oversight responsibilities of that lead mechanic conversion. On the engineering side, we took a look at contracted services expenses. Engineering is largely responsible for managing your capital improvement program, which is largely completed via contractors, engineering and design firms as well as construction firms. You all have your 5-year levy process for capital, which places an interesting constraint on decisions about whether or not to add engineering personnel. But as we looked at the inspection expense that you all are putting forth on an annual basis, you're spending over $1 million in just construction inspection services every year for about 3 people worth of hours, right? The benefit is it's not really 3 people, it's 20 people doing a little bit of project work here and there, so you can get a lot of projects done at one moment. But it's also really expensive. It costs you about $330,000 per 2,080 hours a year per position, right? Per contracted position, which is more than you'd be paid. So one of the things that you all ought to evaluate is the potentially of adding 1 or 2 inspector positions into the organization to offset some of those costs, provide some internal capacity to do some other things. But again, you want to evaluate, there's pros and cons to having a contract position. It's part of your levy, and you want to consider it as part of that process as well. We also were asked to take a look at water pollution control. In 2014, you all had a study completed to evaluate what your staffing needs are in the water pollution control area. We went in and just sort of took a look and see if anything had changed or if there are any adjustments. And fundamentally, we think that the recommendations offered in that report are sound, that they are genuine staffing needs. There's a clear need to focus on preventative maintenance, in water pollution control. You are in the process of building a new facility. There really needs to be a focused program, an intentional program about how those new assets are maintained, and you really need the personnel in order to be able to do that. We did look at deployment at some opportunities to improve the operation, and we've recommended converting to a 10-hour schedule, a split 10-hour schedule from the current 2-schedule 8-hour approach. And what that does, it allows you all to staff 7 days a week instead of 5 days per week. And with the SCADA system, which is an electronic system used to monitor the water pollution control when no one is on site, with the new SCADA system in the new facility, that should be a functional program, and it'll generate some efficiencies. We also have a situation where your mechanic positions, your technician positions in the water pollution control are mowing the grass in several facilities, not just the water pollution control. We'd recommend contracting seasonal employees, and have made some recommendations related to how to improve the hiring process to make that possible, not just within water pollution control, but really across the entire Public Works Department, to eliminate some procedural barriers to getting seasonal people in a timely fashion, which will really allow you all again to focus on preventative maintenance, to put skilled labor on skilled tasks rather than on menial tasks that are labor just college kid can do kind of thing. So those are really kind of our key staffing recommendations in each one of the work units. But there are also a number of operations recommendations that we've offered. One relates to operations and refuse management. We looked at the collection schedule in refuse, recycling, and yard waste, and found that really by switching yard waste collection from Friday to Monday, you can balance out the number of crews that are needed on a day in, day out basis, and it's going to generate some additional capacity. And that additional capacity is what you use to produce that complaint response team that I mentioned. So that's what that team of people, those additional hours, that's what you can deploy with cross-training to be able to focus on some of those complaint response issues. We also looked at revenue opportunities. One of the things we recognize is that you all just went through a fairly difficult budget process, and we're talking about investments in a number of areas. There are some opportunities to potentially generate revenue in the solid waste area. One is by focusing on increasing the recycling rate. You can save money, cut expenses. With every 1% increase, you can save about $11,000 in tipping fees. But also look at a pay-as-you-throw model, which really offers the advantage of one, limiting the amount of refuse that's going into the waste stream and driving down your tipping fee expense, but also creating some capacity to allow people who want extra service to pay for that extra service. Okay, so establishing a baseline service and enforcing it. Okay, that's an important point, because right now you all have a baseline service, but it's not enforced. Folks in your community set out whatever trash they want, and it's going to get picked up. Again, that's that customer service that I referenced. You're providing an amazing service, but there's a real cost to it in terms of how you can lose your folks going forward. We've also recommended adopting a cost recovery goal for the transfer station. The national best practice, really, frankly, is full cost recovery in this area, and you're at 8%. So that's a very low number. That's now. The national best practice is full cost recovery, but it's not really a New England practice to do so. So I would say evaluate what your cost recovery goal is within the context of your area. But it is worth trying to target generating additional revenue from the transfer station. We made some recommendations in the highway maintenance area relative to the snow plan and updating what that snow plan looks like, establishing clear shift schedules to limit the amount of hours that crews are out plowing streets. This is consistent with best practices, and also establishing some really specific training programs designed to generate some efficiency in the snow route system. On the fleet area, we've recommended incorporating more input of user departments to try to generate some consistency of fleet. And again, that's going to produce efficiencies in your fleet operation. If you all have the same kind of passenger cars with minor exceptions for specialty needs, your efficiency in the fleet shop is going to improve dramatically. The other key area that we've targeted, this wasn't a fleet utilization study, so we didn't really do a detailed analysis of the number and type of fleet units that you have. But we have recommended that you begin charging all departments, even general fund departments, for their fleet maintenance, both labor and expenses, because it makes it transparent what the cost is of owning every vehicle that they have. If it's in their budget, departments will be inspired to make better decisions about what they maintain on their fleet, what vehicles they purchase, and what their decisions are with respect to vehicle sharing, vehicle pooling, that kind of thing. So it's a cost structure. It puts a dollar figure to the fleet decisions and is a best practice that we would recommend. And we made some recommendations just about improving the security of shop and parts room, just consistent with some International Facility Fleet Management Association best practices. One kind of key area that impacts every operating department is the role of internal services, HR, finance, purchasing, IT. They can help an operations department meet their objectives, or they can hinder them. There's this balance that has to be struck. You have to control and make sure that policies and procedures are followed, but also create space for operating departments to deliver the service on a day in, day out basis. Right now, the central services departments are operating in a very centralized fashion, but really have very limited staff to be able to provide a centralized level of support. So we're recommending decentralizing the model. It's going to require HR, purchasing, finance to let go of the reins a little bit. And also generate some additional capacity and training in Public Works to take a more direct role and have some decision-making authority in those key areas. But there's still areas where you're going to need, the department's going to consistently need human resource, IT, purchasing, and finance support. So we'd recommend some very clear and measurable service level expectations be established, and that a series of recurring meetings to make sure that the departments are receiving the service that they require are established. So no major issues, just natural staffing constraints, natural issues in terms of staffing constraints and being able to meet the demand that Public Works is generating. So those are kind of the high-level recommendations. Again, we have about 27 recommendations in total in the report. Implementation of those recommendations will cost about $566,000, but about half of that is general fund dollars. The remaining really goes toward is an enterprise fund operation, water pollution control. So we're about $225,000 impact on the general fund. Most of our recommendations are intended to really put the department on a place where it's generating proactive capacity. It's focusing on preventative maintenance rather than reactive maintenance. The balance should be 70% proactive maintenance, 30% complaint driven. Right now it's flipped. It's about 30% complaint driven, or about 70% complaint driven and 30% proactive. So we want to flip that number. And that's really the overall theme of what our recommendations are trying to accomplish. Several of these recommendations are going to require fairly tough policy choices from you all. But one of the things that I would leave you all with is that you can't, it's not really a reasonable expectation to say continue performing the same service at the same cost. There will come a point where you decide to invest additional resources, or you decide to change the service level expectation. Changing that service level expectation is going to be felt. by you all in terms of what you expect your Public Works Department to deliver by your citizens. So minimizing the negative impact of that and making those choices is what we've tried to kind of tee up for you all going forward. It's going to require some work. One of the things that we'll provide after this meeting is an implementation plan. That implementation plan will take each of the recommendations and prioritize them, provide implementation steps, key implementation steps, who's responsible for them and what. That's a tool that you all can use to track the progress of implementation going forward, but it's not going to be done overnight. The folks in Public Works all have current jobs. They all have things that they have to do, and these are all additional projects on top of that. So it's going to take some time, but focusing on those structural improvements, focusing on building those systems will really pay significant dividends in the future in terms of the cost of maintaining your assets. So with that, I will turn it over to any questions you all may have, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Councilor Arnone.
Thank you. It's been 6 years in the works for me personally as a councilor. We've tried to get this implemented for a number of years through the budget process, and it always ends up on the cutting room floor. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy that I think our last council we finally pushed the money aside to have this done. So first question of many, and this is quite a lot to digest, and,
sure.
And you know, when we look at the big, the whole complete report, we'll probably have plenty more questions to go. So my question was, so at one point during the budget process, we had some the Water Pollution Control asked for some more additional personnel. So I had the question, it's probably one of the reasons why we asked you to come on additionally and look at the water pollution control, was the ordinance and where the work begins in public works and where the work begins in water pollution control. Because on our town ordinance, and this is something I hope that you got a chance to look at, but where it's almost at one point the water pollution control was paid through general budget, and now we have it as an enterprise fund. So I want to make sure there's a clear cut from what the responsibilities of the water pollution control are and what the responsibilities of public works are. Our ordinance says they kind of overlap. Mm-hmm. Did you get a chance to look at the ordinance?
Well, we did look at the ordinance as part of our work. We reviewed the charter, we've reviewed your ordinances, we've reviewed existing work plans, historical workload data. We reviewed every possible thing that we could obtain without annoying people to death. So we looked at everything that we could. And that delineation, frankly, is important from an accounting perspective. It's an enterprise fund now, and enterprise funds have certain regulations according to generally accepted accounting standards that require a delineation. So if enterprise fund personnel are doing public works work, there needs to be some accounting mechanism to essentially reimburse what should be operated like a business. What I would say is the management of sort of building the process of going through your new facility construction. There's been heavy involvement from the Public Works Director. Those individuals who are working in water pollution control should have some reimbursement from the water fund, but generally that focus ought to be in water pollution control. That's really the intent of our recommendations. The preventative maintenance process, the work planning process, the recommendations we made relative to the Public Works Department at large apply equally to water pollution control, however. So many of those management system recommendations, there's no delineation. The director of the water pollution, the superintendent of the water pollution control ought to have those work plans in place, ought to have management systems established, and ought to be responsible for managing those things under their bailiwick and communicating key indicators up to the director and ultimately up to you. So we see some division, but you don't want it to be too siloed, because one of the things you'll often see with enterprise operations is they have a dedicated funding source. They get all the nicest backhoes, and they have 10 backhoes, and the highway crew has 2. And so you also want to have some equipment sharing, some crew sharing. You don't want it to be so rigid that it impedes operations, but you got to account for it properly, right? That's the key piece.
So is that in the report?
Yes, it is, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. And last follow-up on that too is the cost of actually replacing sewer lines is now the burden of the Public Works. Should that change, or is that not in your purview?
I don't know that we spoke to that, whether it should be or not. Frankly, that's a kind of an accounting decision in terms of where it should be seated. My assumption and again, this is without looking at the data, but if you're talking about moving personnel under enterprise services, that has a fee impact. So you all can make the decision as a council to raise fees and roll strict sewer line replacement expenses under the enterprise fund operation, or you can choose to subsidize that with general fund labor, but it ought to be an intentional decision. That would be what our recommendation would be.
All right, I'll keep it at that tonight. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? I have a couple questions. So interesting, preventive maintenance is an interesting term. So or an interesting phrase. So part of that is the ability to constantly look at your operation and willing to constantly look at your operation and make changes. So that's where it gets lost in preventive maintenance, that we just have some people who can, again, prevent something that happens before it happens. But part of it is actually having the ability to sit and evaluate what's going on and willing to change your function to do that, which I don't think we have that ability right now. And so what I mean by that is, it's easy to say we're going to hire some people for preventive maintenance, but are we willing to actually, did you see, so for example, as does the management staff sit down and say, meet on a quarterly basis, maybe a semi-annual basis, saying, hey, we have something we know that's coming up. This person would be a great person to handle that issue, or be someone we could train, or think, those sort of things. That's preventive maintenance, meaning, hey, you're looking ahead, you're seeing what's going to happen. You look at the staff that you have, and do you have the staff to help you get to move forward? Yeah. And part of the process with the roads is, to your point, we started the road referendum back in 1999. So I was on the council at the time, and that was the first one we did. The interesting thing, and I know this is out of your purview, but to actually go back and see if we actually spent our money wisely. Here we are, four terms into the road referendum. We may not be able to get to the next one for a few years because of the budget, but do we do it? And so do we do that sort of analysis?
Well, so
and so
yeah.
To your point on the asset management,
yeah,
I love when I get a budget and someone tells me it's a zero increase.
Yeah,
it means nothing to me.
Yeah,
as you know, because it doesn't mean we could be spending on things that we don't even need, yet we don't know.
Yeah,
So to your point of preventive maintenance, to my point out of this whole report, we actually got to be able to document what we're currently doing before we can do anything else. That's the most important thing. So this other stuff is good. So if you're going to give me an implementation plan, can you give me that, how we start that process?
Absolutely. So we have a number of recommendations: work plans, work order systems, the performance management system. So we've made recommendations specific and detailed, and really in exceptional detail in the report in terms of what you have to do to get to that place, because you're absolutely right. Step one is start collecting the data.
Right.
Identify what you currently do. We've taken a first step at this, and I would say, the Public Works Department's desire to get this study going is recognition of the need to try to figure out how to do this in a prioritized way. So that was our task from Public Works, is to come in and say, where are we at, where do we need to go, and how do we get there? Okay, so that's what our recommendations are designed to address. Those documenting work plans for every one of your crews, being very specific about what preventative maintenance is on schedule in year 1 and year 5, and tying that into your capital levy, right? The investment that you're doing there to make sure so there's a lot that has to be done. We don't think that there's a great deal of existing management capacity to be able to do that. The Public Works Director is often drawn into day-to-day operations of individual crews. That individual needs to be able to step back and think strategically. That asset management position needs to be developed to have a central consolidating point, and you need that operations person who's going to materialize it into work plans. So it's all connected.
Do you consider that asset manager, I hate to use this term, but sort of a middle management type position? And I'm just saying this from experience, the level in an organization where you struggle the most, in anything, whether it be in the private sector or the public sector, is that middle level, to your point, where they're the ones in the day-to-day work, working with the crews, so the senior managers can actually, again, do some of the things you're talking about, plan, take the time to budget correctly, recognize the weakness of the organization. But since they're always dragged into that day-to-day stuff, is that the level, I'm just being, you're not putting in a spot, but do you feel that's a level within the town or the Public Works that maybe?
We would recommend it would report to the Deputy Director of Capital Projects. It's almost a specialty position, a technical, think of an engineer, right? It's the same kind of position, someone with technical expertise who can add sort of value to the organization at large.
Any other questions from anyone? No, I think your observation, I'm just saying personally, about the complaints versus the preventive maintenance is a very fair one. I think that's, and probably it's some of us that actually probably would give them some of those, complaints to deal with. And I think it's a fair observation on the report. I agree. It prevents preventive maintenance, so to speak, living day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard to put a finger on, though, sometimes, right?
Right.
It's hard to quantify what you don't have to do.
The only last thing I'll say is the implementation plan, at least to me, the key thing, how do we start, how do we get organized?
Yeah.
That's the biggest, so everything else is easy.
Yeah.
But the time management aspect, I think, is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Is that going to be part of your, kind of the implementation plan? 'Cause I think that's the most important part.
So we prioritize based on 3 criteria. What's kind of quick? What's a quick win?
Right. Yeah.
What can you knock out? What are those long-term things that have significant operational or financial impact? And what are those things that are difficult to do that are kind of or easier to do that are medium
Right.
term? So we'll structure those in that way. We also reference recommendations, the critical path. So if these 3 recommendations need to be implemented before these 3, we'll be very specific about that. But we also provide it in a Microsoft Word document because it's intended to be part of that performance management system. The expectation will be every recommendation will be assigned to one individual within Public Works. That individual is responsible for developing their project plan and reporting it through the performance management system we've recommended. That document can be used for you all as elected officials to track progress and to build recurring reports in terms of where we're at. And frankly, things are going to change. There may be recommendations that the department tries to implement and says, you know what, this actually just doesn't make sense for us anymore. This condition has changed, or we have a different option that meets the same objective at less expense. There ought to be flexibility to do that, right? So it should be a living document that you all use on as an iterative tool.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I've just
Thank
been
you.
sitting here trying to formulate how do I ask this question. I mean, we've been sitting on facilities now for 5 years, and we know. Do you think that the age of our facilities is a factor in perhaps our staffing and some of the problems that we have with our asset management, that some of this is purely age related to the buildings?
You want to go ahead?
Yeah. I think age certainly is a factor. I don't think it is purely a factor, because with appropriate preventive maintenance and having the ability to predict what needs to be done really before it needs to be done, frankly.
Right, but that's
Keeps-
right. But I guess for me, it's more when people say stuff like that. There's this implementation that people aren't doing the things that they should be doing in a timely fashion. But we have a lot of stuff in this town that's just reached an end of its life, and with that being said, there's nothing you can do, in a maintenance plan when renewal is what needs to be done.
That's exactly right, and that's why a maintenance plan, a preventive maintenance plan, will recognize that there is a level of maintenance that can be done that does make a difference. There's another level that needs to be done to rejuvenate it, and then there is a level of maintenance that you should not undertake because you are simply throwing good money after bad. And
That's
so
what we want to hear.
that's really the secret to preventive maintenance. Road work is a really good example of that. People will spend a lot of money to rebuild roads that are completely fallen apart. Preventive maintenance would do crack sealing and other kinds of really just maintenance that's light on roads to keep them from going down that deterioration curve. Once they're down there, all you can do is rebuild them, because anything else you do is a waste of money. And the same is true of buildings.
Correct. Thank you.
On the rating part too, we have to do more asset management. So now our roads program actually does have an asset management, and you would say the same for buildings, and we need to put that same scorecard on all our buildings, same type of
I think
system.
you have an asset rating system on your roads. I'm not at all certain that that's being followed. I sat in on a lot of interviews, and it seemed to me it was almost there was a bit of a worst first kind of approach to that, when you can get a lot more bang for your buck with a few dollars preventing a roadway from deteriorating even further, and then having a capital program that will do the worst first. It's not a maintenance issue at that point, it's capital replacement. And so that's, I'd say you have the data. I'm not certain that you have a preventive maintenance program that's utilizing the data.
That's actually an interesting distinction, that, I mean, between capital and then actually ongoing maintenance. I think that's something we've struggled with the council. That's actually a very interesting distinction that I think, I think that we can take into consideration. Just curious, last question. For the amount of buildings that we have in town, just curious, how do we compare to other like-sized towns? I don't know if you've got into that, just curious.
So we did a benchmarking portion of the project. You'll see it's included as an attachment, but it's limited to publicly available information, and square footage information and condition for facilities is
Okay, no
not
problem.
something I can pluck out of a website.
Got it, no
So,
problem. Yep,
yeah.
fair. Any other questions from the council?
Okay. We will leave these copies of the report. We have an electronic copy here, and there's a copy on this thumb drive too as well, which I'll just leave with you all. We're available for questions, and like I said, that implementation plan will be coming shortly. I'll send it to the Director of Public Works. And
Great.
And we really appreciate the opportunity to work with you all. Again, if you have any questions as you embark upon implementation, we are always available. We are tethered to our phones like everyone else these days. So.
Well, thank you very much for both of you coming here. Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your help.
Monday, August 6, 2018. Counselor Falk, prayer, please.
Lord, as we gather today at this meeting, we ask that you will be in our midst. Help us to make decisions that will be pleasing to you. Help us to be able to discuss the matters at hand in a reasonable way and be willing to give up having our own way. God, let this meeting be productive and that should be the case in all areas of our lives. Help us keep you in the forefront of our minds as we do the work set before us. And God, please bless our police and military for protecting our freedoms so that we may be here today to serve our community. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Suzanne, roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
Here.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Counselor Muller.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Here.
Counselor Ungary.
Here.
Here. Counselor Arnone.
Here.
Counselor Bosco.
Here.
Counselor Sakala.
Here.
Counselor Crissati. Counselor Davis. Counselor Denny.
Here.
There's 9 members present, 2 are absent.
Item number 4, the fire evacuation announcement. In case of a fire, please exit calmly to the back. Either go right or left to the exit out back, or to our left and to your right. The door's right there. Then take the first doors to the left, go down the stairs, and go right out the doors. Item number 5, meeting of preceding minutes. Special meeting April 26, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Counselor Falk. Seconded by Counselor Denny. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have 1 abstention and 8 in favor.
I haven't voted yet because my iPad's not working. Was I there?
That's a good. I think you were. Listen, you were there.
There.
Then yes.
So 8 in favor, 1 abstention.
There's one I wasn't there.
Motion to approve regular meeting July 2nd, 2018.
Second.
Council by approval by Deputy Mayor Suzak, seconded by Councilor Denny. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? 8 in favor, 1 abstention. We have special guests tonight, and first up, Lori Witten, Director of Development Services. Please come up.
Hello.
How you doing? Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to the town of Enfield.
Thank you. I'm very honored and excited to be here.
So before Lori, Chris, I'll let you have a. I know
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
thank you
right
for
ahead.
that
Sorry
welcome.
about that.
We're very excited to have her here. She started this morning. Her office is next to mine. She went in, and I didn't see her again until right now. So she's been hard at work, and we welcome her as our new Director of Development Services. She served in a light capacity. Was actually the Director of Planning and Development in East Windsor for the last 14 years. She was in Simsbury for 6 before that, but she actually started here as an assistant planner in Enfield at the beginning of her career. So we're very happy to have her back. And now that she's learned all that she has and has all this wisdom and knowledge and experience, she can bring it to bear in this town. And we hope that she will. I'm confident that she will. So she's going to speak just briefly. She's very excited to be here. We've told her about all the various and different projects that we have and hope for the town. I think her skill set is very, very good. She is going to be assessing the department over the next couple of weeks to see how she would like to go forward, because there was a reorganization plan that Mike Cirillo had put together for me. She's looked at it and in theory likes it, but we said let her get boots on the ground and let her make her own assessment with those personnel. I will tell you that we have some very good people in those departments throughout building and development, and our engineers. I'm very impressed by them. They're enthusiastic, they're optimistic, and I think with the help of a leader such as Lori, they're going to help us move forward and do some very, very good and exciting developments for the town. And I've told her the catchwords. We want people that are customer friendly, that are respectful, and that are honest and transparent. That's the line that we're using, and we're going to hopefully have for all of our new employees and existing employees, and I think she's going to help us implement that. And without further ado, Lori.
Well, hi. Well, you kind of gave a pretty good rundown there, but I'm hopeful that I'm going to be able to work as a team with you and also the departments. That's my philosophy: is you don't do one thing on your own. You do everything by a team, and you collaborate together and work together to make sure that you move in the same direction that everybody wants to go in. So I have an open door policy. I am the type of person that wants to see the developer or the applicant come in before they've spent any money on engineers or architects or anything. Make sure that what they want to do is actually feasible. And that way they know what they're getting themselves into, and we know where they're going. And perhaps maybe we could suggest some alternative designs, or maybe they need a text amendment or whatever. Planning and zoning regulation should be dynamic. They should change with the needs and the times of the community. So, of course, I need to work with the Planning and Zoning Commission on that and get their feel for things of that nature. But I think that there's a lot of great things going on here. You've got the Thompsonville revitalization and the river recapture, and I guess we're going to be working on some TIF plans, some tax increment financing. Hopefully we'll get somebody with a greater economic development background to assist in the team. And I don't know. So just a quick little background. I have been the wetlands agent. I have been the zoning enforcement officer. I have been the assistant planner. I have worked with the agricultural and conservation commissions, and I've been the town planner. So I kind of feel like I've got a well-rounded background, so I understand where a lot of the workers have issues and can find frustration. So hopefully we'll be able to work together and find solutions. So.
Very cool. Anyone have, not to put her on a spot, any questions?
Just welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to put a lot of hours in. It's very important to us on your position, and it's been, vacant quite too many times in my tenure. So I hope you're going to be here for a good long time and carry things through. And again, welcome.
That's my hopes as well. To be here for a long time.
I just want to say welcome, and I look forward to working with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I only have two requests. A, we put a welcome sign in front of your office, so when people come, again, it's not a crime for people to want to spend money in this town. That's all I ask. That's our culture. We want people to invest their money because, again, we should be the economic center of Northern Connecticut. So I appreciate welcome, and I look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're open for business.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
And our next guest, Steve Belinda, HR Director. Welcome, sir. Sorry, Chris, go right ahead.
Yes, just briefly, while the search for a town manager is exempted under Freedom of Information because you have been appointed as the Executive Search Committee, so that those deliberations, discussions take place in private, sometimes there does come a time when we're going to make a little difference, or it's important, I think, for the public to know where we're at in the process and where you are intending to go forward, because it's an important job hire. So to that end, the council thought it appropriate to have a report by Mr. Belinda, and then after the town attorney will speak out of turn on a related part of that subject for the public edification. Steve?
Right. Good evening, Town Council and everyone out there. So on April 16th, our recruiter for the town manager position launched a hiring campaign nationwide to obtain viable candidates for the town of Enfield. The initial deadline was May 16th, and it produced only 19 applicants, of which only 3 met the minimal requirements of the town charter. So the town council, the town manager, and myself, we met, and we decided to tweak the annual compensation to troubleshoot the recruitment effort and find out if the compensation was consistent with the marketplace. What that allowed us to do is, instead of just saying a ceiling of $160,000, we put in language that said town council will consider more compensation depending on the candidate's qualifications and/or experience. We then launched a second recruitment, and we did produce more candidates, bringing in a total of 40. But only 3 more were minimally qualified for a total of 6 applicants. However, 1 had already been hired, 1 was not recommended by a recruiter, and another candidate was only the town manager of many different small towns, and our recruiter cautioned us not to waste our time with this candidate. On July 17th, 2018, 3 candidate resumes were presented to the town council. 1 candidate, although minimally qualified, did not have enough relevant experience to run a town the size of Enfield. The other 2 candidates are still in contention, but just 2 candidates is not an adequate pool of candidates for this town council to consider. So why such a small pool of town managers candidate applications for this job? In talking to our recruiter, she gave us a few reasons. One, there's something out there called a silver tsunami, and if you want to take the time, please look at a Google search, and you'll see all kinds of information. But just briefly, roughly 10,000 employees are retiring every day in this country. Just think about that for a minute. And they're hitting government jobs with a vengeance. The most logical replacements for the millennials are born between 1980 and 1995. But they're not flocking to government jobs. And I think my theory is that between 1980 to 1990s, that's when the whole computer revolution took place. It's more for college kids to start going into IT jobs, computer jobs, websites, things like that. They're not going to government jobs. One of the second impediments to our recruitment process is that the charter, the educational requirements are very stringent on having a degree in public administration or government. Again, going back to my theory, people are not getting degrees in those fields anymore, those disciplines. Another impediment is the residency requirement. Our recruiter says that residency requirement is hurting us as far as trying to go after local talent in Connecticut and Massachusetts. We're not worried about getting talent out in Florida and other areas because we know they have to move and they're going to move to Enfield. But to get candidates who are familiar with dealing with public unions, familiar with state laws, they're not applying for these jobs for whatever reason. And one other caution is that we were also competing with the town of Meriden. They had 65 applicants, 25 more than us, and their requirements were not as stringent as ours. So we are competing with the marketplace, whether we like it or not. So one of the things that she strongly recommended to us is to go back to council and to the town manager and see, is there any way that we can relax one of these requirements, such as a residency requirement? And that's why I'm here before you guys.
Thank you, Stephen. To that end, that request was made to the town attorney, the office, and Maria Elson has a report for the council.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. As the mayor and the council authorized me, I did make contact with Attorney Wes Horton in order to look at that particular provision in the charter, which has to do with the residency, and to see whether or not that was something that was absolutely required or whether that was something that was waivable by you. I have explained to you Mr. Horton's credentials, but just for people who may not know him, he is one of the premier appellate lawyers. He has a particular expertise in constitutional matters as well as ethics. I contacted Attorney Horton. He did provide an opinion. He's argued cases, over 125 cases at the Connecticut Supreme Court. He also successfully argued the Kelo case. I spoke with Attorney Horton, and he did provide a comprehensive opinion. He believes that that requirement is just a provision that is waivable by the council. It's there not to hamper you, but to help you if you want to use it. So it's not a requirement that's absolute.
So with that is the council's prerogative as to how they wish to instruct Mr. Belinda and Joe Ellen to proceed.
Okay, so with that proviso, I will then go back to our recruiter and tell her to go ahead and resubmit the advertisement for town manager position without the mandatory requirement of a residency requirement. And we'll do it for about a couple of weeks and see if we're going to target just Massachusetts and Connecticut area. That'll save us about $2,000 from going nationwide.
Thank you for the update. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria.
Sorry. Item number 7, public communication. Would anyone like to speak for the council? Mr. Finger. Huh? Okay, yeah, you have 5 minutes, and obviously we ask folks to be respectful and no swearing on the council floor.
Or no personalities.
And no personalities. Yeah.
Doug, put the mic on. I think
Just
it's
your
off.
name and address for the record.
Is it on now?
please.
Yes.
Cool. You know I hate this thing. First of all, I want to apologize to you, but mostly to a man who I have deep respect for, and that's our acting town manager, Chris Thompson. But before I came here tonight, I was told that as soon as I walked in that door, there was going to be information handed out about tonight's meeting that we had earlier at 6 o'clock. Then when they said we weren't getting nothing, Obviously, as you know, me being the person who I am for the president of the Department of Public Works, I was very upset. And yeah, I shouldn't use that word. And Chris, I deeply apologize to you because I have a lot of respect for this man.
And I just want to state, and we don't do back and forth, I was unaware of that representation. I didn't know they were going to be separate, and I apologize for that. I would have had it handed out as we ultimately did. I love Doug, so we're all good.
Yeah, he's a great man. And if you're looking for a good town manager, I think that's the man you need to hire, in my personal opinion, and professional. Second thing is, that study was kind of a shock. And I don't mean it in a bad way, but I mean it as far as, I mean, in my opinion, they brought up things that we're already looking at, we've already been doing. I don't understand some of the things, so I want to ask you, as a president of this union, how do I get questions to you to ask them or me to them? Because I just think some things are wrong. I think that they underlooked things, and I think that they copied things that we're already doing. And one of the things is, and I'll bring up, is preventive maintenance. If any of you know anything about buildings and grounds, we put out fires. We put out fires. We try so bad to do preventive maintenance. We don't have the personnel. And I love the thing about my HVAC guy, because the first meeting I came to, I said, I want my HVAC guy back. I still think that. I just think that we need to sit down and discuss this in a more professional way between the unions and yourselves, all of you. I mean, obviously I can't pick and choose who I can talk to. I have to talk to all of you. But I think we need to do that, because if it's going to benefit the taxpayers of this town, because I'm one of them, because like I said, there's certain things in there I think that we don't need, and it may benefit, my union. I just don't agree with it. And I think that's probably wrong. I'm probably going to get, some yelling at from my members, but, those of you who know me, I'm not that way. So I think we need to discuss what this, what do you want to call it, study went through and where it's going or possible going. And I think we need to do it openly. And I hope you I hope you accept my invitation to sit down with all of you about this. Because we have to look at the taxpayers. And that's since 1999, as some of you have known, I've been the president or vice president of this union. I've worked very hard into gaining the respect of councils on both sides, Democratic and Republican. We've donated to both parties. We've never, ever, ever chose sides. Even when the Democrats were in charge at one time, we didn't care. We want both sides. We want all of your respect. And we've had that respect. I've earned that respect. And I hope you keep maintaining that respect, because it is something that's very important to us and our members. So I know you look at your watch, Mike, and I appreciate it.
No, it's fine. I hate cutting people off.
I know you do,
fine.
buddy. I saw that. But again, we really need to talk about this. Well, I think we all do. And I'd be more than willing to sit down with you. And I hope you accept my invitation. Let's sit down and talk about this, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jack. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
No swearing.
No.
I had to make sure I'm saying it to everybody.
Jack Sheridan, 7 Buchanan Road. When it comes to the maintenance things, I actually believe that we are missing the boat on a lot of that kind of thing. I wrote down just a few things, but I mean, if you and I buy a new car, what do? We do the maintenance according to the schedule. Yes.
The mic's not working tonight.
I'll just have to speak a little louder. Yeah, so when we buy things for our home, whether it's an air conditioner or a boiler or whatever it is, it's amazing the things that are in those service things that we should be looking at, and I don't think we're doing it. And over time, from having attended lots of these meetings in the past, like MSDS sheets. Do you know that there was nobody assigned to check MSDS sheets coming into the school system? Well, that led to the contamination of the kilns and lots of cost. So those are the kinds of things that we need somebody to be looking at. And when's the last time you think anybody checked the pH levels in the waters in the boilers in any of these buildings? Because that's very important. The acidic level is what eats away at the insides of these boilers. When are we checking it? We're not. So air conditioner, pumps, valves, I made a whole list of things. You know, I worked for Wiley Laboratories as a test technician. Wiley Laboratories was doing a job, believe it or not, for Hamilton Standard on a top secret thing at the time. This was years ago. And the vacuum pumps, we had 2 4-cylinder vacuum pumps to pull 50, 60,000 feet of vacuum on the tests we were doing, a chamber, 10 feet by 10 feet. And one of the vacuum pumps, and we cycled this thing up and down. Well, when it was on the down cycle, the one pump was sufficient, but it had to go back up to 60,000 feet. And there was a rod knock developed, and we were going to ruin the life of the test that we were doing if we had to redo it. I mean, there was a lot. So I got a call from another division, come over and rebuild this pump. And it had to be quick, overnight. So I worked right through the night, complete, got it done, had to go to New Jersey to get the parts, did the whole job, got it running, actually made the test. Right, and after that, they put me in charge of the maintenance. And the big thing was they didn't know how many cycles had been on those compressors or those vacuum pumps. Well, think about that. You're depending on this thing, you're charging big numbers for these things, and in the end, it costs us more than if we had done the maintenance correctly. So I just give you that story to see how that thing will snowball out of control. So I think it's very good that we're really looking at that, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it, sir. Anyone else like to speak for the council tonight? Bob. Welcome, sir. Name and address for the record.
As Jack announced his name, I'm going to announce my name. Bob T. Katz, 815 Woodgate Circle. Primarily, I want to thank Chris Bromson for his prayers. I had a heart condition, arrhythmia. Chris promised he'd say a prayer every day, and I appreciate that. And as I was in St. Francis, I was astonished when a rabbi came in. He said, "I want to give you a blessing." I says, "Rabbi, I'm sorry, I'm not the same religion." I says, "However, we worship the same God." He says, "Can I give you a blessing?" I says, "Absolutely." I have arrhythmia. I had not a pacemaker. I had a bidefibrillator put in 2 weeks ago. I feel like I'm 40 years old again.
You look it, dude, Bob. You look great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Not as old as Jack. But it's amazing the technology that's coming. They asked me if I'm interested in new technology. I'm on a new regime of drugs that just come out. They showed me a pacemaker, which I don't need, but it's probably like as big as that goes through the groin up into your heart. It's not the big box anymore that people had, so technology has really made a long way. But I want to talk about preventative maintenance. I talked to a boiler maintenance people out in Rhode Island. They're big. They maintain boilers all over New England and New York. They said you should be getting 100 years out of your boilers. If you're not doing that, you don't have a preventative maintenance program. We're spending money that we don't have to. We're not maintaining. The elementary schools are in terrible shape. The roofs. We're coming out with a referendum for middle school, which we don't need to do. In fact, middle schools are starting to be obsolete. Wilbraham is closing their 2 middle schools. They're integrating the 7th and 8th grade into the high school because of declining enrollment. East Hampton is going to knock down their middle school and a 100-year-old elementary school in another building, and they're going to build a K-8 building. Long Meadow's got 2 middle schools, which they're talking about closing and expanding their elementary schools for a K-8 program. That's the way things are going. We're always behind the times trying to hold on to something that it's not working educational-wise. Our third grade students are a grade and a half ahead of what they should be, but by the time they get to 8th grade, they're behind. Why is that? The new generation of kids get lost in 5th grade up. So the births are declining at a rate that you're going to have 900 kids in the middle school. You need to have a new enrollment study because things are declining at a rapid rate. And if you don't do that, you're spending $95 million or $85 million where that money should be going into the elementary schools, not in the middle school. So it's a big mistake, and I really believe it's another referendum that's going to go down in flames, as many of the other referendums, because you don't explain it to people. You're doing things that you shouldn't be doing where you should be spending the money over in the elementary schools. That's all I have to say. And Chris, thank you very much. We'll get the rabbi and you and I and say prayers.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak for the council tonight? For the first time? Sorry, for the second time. Go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
Jack Sheridan, I haven't moved, 7 Buchanan Road. I write notes to myself and then I didn't read it. The town charter. I was on the last town charter committee, and I don't know about the rest of the people, I can't speak for them, but when we have that in the town charter, you say, wait a minute, we were thinking more of hiring people from a distance and having our search thing, and never considered the fact that, so I think I go along, I do go along with the fact that that's something that you guys should be able to change or recommend a change. So I just wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it. Doug.
Mr. Finger the first time, now it's Doug.
You behaved the first time, so you get Doug.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And just for the records, it's 44 Buchanan Road, Suzanne, just because I didn't give it the last time. Okay. I don't know where Mr. T-Cats gets his information, but there's no boiler that lasts 100 years. Okay. I don't care. It doesn't happen. The biggest problem we got in this town is the water. The water that we get pumped into these boilers. We have a boiler meeting, I think it's tomorrow, I hope. Yeah, it is, tomorrow morning, with Honeywell about pre-treating our boilers properly so our boilers will last a lot longer. That's been a problem because there's no training. Years ago, head custodians used to drain out the plugs and the bottom of these old boilers and flush them out, get all the rust out and everything else. Well, now things have switched around. Head custodians aren't what they used to be. I mean, they're still great people, but they're just not trained in what they should be about treating the boilers or maintaining preventive maintenance.
Right.
Doesn't happen that way. So that's why we're getting all these different sections that are blowing out, like JFK. I can show you a video on my phone. The last section of JFK Boiler 1, which is the last one that has survived, where we started and also went, now this water started blowing out, and that's why we ended up renting out the temporary boiler. We got to treat, or we had to do preventive maintenance on all this stuff. And Donna, I'm sure, shaking her head to me, yes, 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 yes. You know, she knows this stuff. She's been learning her stuff right along. But we need to do something to make these schools. I mean, this is the last rainstorm we had. I must have had 15 emails telling me I got leaks in places they never had them before. In schools that never had leaks, water leaks. We have to start doing something. We just can't, do the popcorn, reaction to everything. So my opinion is, yes, we need to do something. Preventive is the biggest word, but we need to spend money on that. And where does the money come from? That's your job. That's your job.
The money tree died.
But please don't take it out in the back of the workers, okay? Just don't do that. But I agree with what Donna's been thinking about, facilities. She's been doing a good job on that, and I just want to say thank you, Donna. All right? Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else for the second time like to speak for the council? for the third time. Bob?
Bob T. Katz, Buchanan Road. Mr. Fingers said the magic word, preventative maintenance, and it hasn't been done. So that's where everything should change. They should have sheets on what has to be done daily, weekly, monthly, in every building. There has to be a schedule, and it has to be adhered to. And I disagree with him. The experts on boilers says you could get 100 years out of boilers because they're doing boilers over 100 years now in the New England area. So I think Mr. Fingers ought to just check it out and get his facts straight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Hearing none, I'll declare public communications closed. Moving on to item 8, council communications. Anyone, any counselor? Councilman Bosco?
Yes, hi. I like to read this into the record, just so everybody out there understands. We've been hearing the misconception that we have not been spending any money on the schools. We haven't been fixing them, all the buildings, and one of the reasons stuff isn't getting done is because of what we have in charter for our bid limit. So. Back on August 24, 2015, question number 3, shall the town of Enfield appropriate $44,000 for the reconstruction and repair improvements to various town-owned facilities, including security enhancements to the school buildings, and authorize the issues of bonds, notes, temporary notes, obligations, and an amount not to exceed $44 million to finance said appropriation. So just to set the record straight, I want everyone to I want everyone to understand that the town council did not try to not fix these buildings. Our hands were tied because of the policies that we have in the charter on how much to repair stuff. So $600,000 doesn't go very far. So I guess my point of the matter is we have one right now that we have JFK. You could agree with the numbers to fix it. You could disagree with the numbers to fix it, but it's very important that everybody in the town realizes what a no vote and what a yes vote means. So you can't be sticking your finger out and saying that, and I'll say the exact words, Republicans went and they never fixed our buildings. That's why we have leaky roofs. No, ma'am, we tried. It was said no at the referendum, so the taxpayers of Enfield said no to repair our buildings. It wasn't the council, it wasn't anyone, it was the taxpayers, and the taxpayers have the right to say, no, I don't want something done when they don't have the money, because they're the ones that could understand the most on what they have. But don't try to blame the council sitting here that repairs didn't get done because the taxpayers voted no. And the tally was 2,556 people voted in the town of Enfield to repair, for that referendum to repair the building, and 3,651 voted against it. So it was pretty much an overwhelmingly deal that the people did not want to spend the money to fix the buildings. But you need to put the blame where the blame is set. We tried. And when I hear that we didn't do anything, well, yes, we did. We had what we could do by law was set out a referendum, and the taxpayers are the only one to know how their money should be spent. And it was voted no. So I just wanted to clear that up and just make sure it's fresh for everyone's memory coming into the next referendum, that we all need to really look at things, because if it doesn't pass, what are we going to do? And you know, these referendums are very important, and when they fail, here you go. This was just proof right there. This is what the consequences are. We have no boilers in JFK. We have roofs leaking at Henry Barnard. Not because all over town, not because we didn't try to fix it. We tried, but because of charter, we have no other option to back out, and I hate to say it, but $600,000 doesn't do much today. So I just want everyone to know, and that's my comments for tonight.
Thank you, Councilman Bosco.
Just Councilman Communication.
Anyone next?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
At our last meeting, I brought up the issue of the bridge, and you probably talk about the bridge, South River Street Bridge. The fact that there was a proposal and funding from the federal government to replace that bridge, and it has to go to referendum because we have to fund it up front. No? Doesn't have to go to referendum?
I can do it under my report if you'd like.
Yeah, okay.
But
I
it
want
does
you to
not.
talk about it. That's
Yep.
all. All right.
It's on the agenda later as well, Peter.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and move items E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, and O to miscellaneous and proceed to vote.
Motion made to suspend the rules, second by Councilor Falk. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, by show of hands, all those in favor? Those opposed? 8 in favor, 0 against. Any other council communications? Deputy Mayor Suzak?
Chris left.
He's come.
Oh, he's
Right
right.
there.
Okay. Actually, I looked in the PAR and I just want a verification that the new system with ETV will have the crawler back for people to get their notices via the television. And maybe a time frame on that. Thank you.
So Chris can address that in town manager report.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Yep.
It's a big item for some of our residents.
Okay. Councilor Engar?
I just wanted to give a shout out to the 4th of July committee and all their efforts and planning and for the celebration that we had in town. People from all over come and help celebrate our 4th of July. And I just wanted to thank all the people that sponsor that. Also the Mount Carmel people this past weekend.
Okay. Any other council communication? Just real quick, I just want to, so Chris, are you going to give just a quick, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I just want to make sure you mention what happened with the Korean exchange students in your report? The
Sure.
positive, and just, I want to thank the Dean of Students, Mr. St. James, Tim over at ACC, Dr. Lee, I guess the coordinator of the Korean students, and again, of course, Bigelow Commons for housing them in their stay here in America. And so if you could comment on that, I know it was a very good event. And I just think real quick in closing, not to kind of belabor Councilman Communications, I think, some of the things we heard in the report, and I'm glad that folks saw the report of what it was. It was, the report is basically what we're trying to do is gather information so we can make informed decisions with the budget. We're doing it a year in advance. All council folks are meeting on a subcommittee members in various departments in the town. And so when we get to the spring of next year, we're not having a month debate on what we should keep and what we shouldn't keep and what we can't do. So the gentleman's right, we need data. We need data to be able to make informed decisions. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to gather data to make the right decisions as we move forward as a town. And again, not asking for the taxpayers for 2 million increases every year. That's what this is about. It's not attacking anyone. It's trying to gather data so we can make good decisions and where we want to move forward as a town. And I think, as you saw, I agree, some of the report is a little bit, it seemed like we've already started a lot of this. The facilities committee, one of the, again, the hardest working committee we have, they're already working at consolidating the buildings. So what you'll see in the fall, the winter of next year, some tough decisions on what buildings we keep and what ones we close. We can't afford 27 buildings anymore. As you can see, we can't afford to bring them up to code, every single building. We just can't afford to do it unless folks are okay going to referendum every year and asking for $50, $60 million. So that's underway already, and we're working on that. The elementary schools, tonight we're going to be passing a bill to start the first phase of Henry Barnard. We understand the roof needs to be fixed, and this is the first year we actually did it through the capital improvement budget instead of asking the taxpayers every single year for another referendum. And that's living within the charter, but also getting work done. And so we're moving forward with stuff. We're trying to do it in a very responsible way. And I think even the refurbish of JFK, that was done with board and council folks working together, both parties, with professionals and folks from the community, where again, we'll have the report, I think, in September it'll be revealed, we make the decision. So I think, those things with the boilers that we have the issues there, we're trying to do things in a professional manner so folks can be informed in the decisions And whether you're for or against, that's okay. But hopefully folks will realize that we're trying to do this not in a vacuum, but actually plan a year and ahead. So we hopefully will have these decisions. The budget should be simple next year. Everything should be done before we get to the spring. That's the goal. Not saying we're going to get there, but that's the goal. And so I think that's what, and I want to commend everybody in the council because they're giving up even more of their time to go meet to these subcommittee meetings that we're really starting to have in earnest to deal with all the issues that you're bringing up. Again, so I think, the TIF is coming up through development services, Blight Board. We have a whole number of things going on. So I hope folks will, we have a quarterly meeting at the end of the month, for example, which will show out where we're going to go over the town development plan, evacuation plan. I guarantee you could ask most people in this town, they wouldn't know where to go if we actually had a real emergency. So we're actually going to continue to try to inform the public on where we're going. And Chris, last thing I'll say, I don't know if it's, the invitation. I have no problem ever meeting with the unions, but I'll defer to you how you'd like to handle that. I would take Mr. Finger's invitation, and if you felt that was appropriate, I would definitely show up. So again, I'll defer, and in any information he asked, if you have questions, I'd send them to Chris, and he'll get them to the Novak group. So it goes direct. You have the direct lines that are coming through us. You go right to Chris. I hope folks are fine with that. We have no problem you answering questions. So go ahead.
Yeah. So actually, I don't have a problem with it, but I think there's a better approach to this, and that's some sort of union management, even council committee, to follow this rather extensive report through. Yep. And I think it's a sound idea, and it'll be right down your alley what you want to do, and be in time for next year's budget, and let everybody sit around, including employees, and go over this together and see where we can find those efficiencies and maybe critique it a little bit.
I was going to address that in my report as well, Mr. Arnold.
Sorry, take away your thunder.
Oh, no, I understand.
We're thinking the same way now. We're on the same wavelength. And again, the point of this is every dollar matters. Every single dollar matters. And that's what we're trying to do. And so, but again, we want the debate. We want the back and forth. But again, we just asked folks, again, we're trying to do the right thing. And I'm talking both parties. Because again, we're asking both parties to show up, again, out of their personal time. We're meeting on these subcommittee meetings where most of these folks work for a living, and they're showing up and they're spending. So I want to commend all council folks for, again, I'm pushing it hard, so I apologize. But we have a lot of work to do before we get ready for next year. So I want to commend everyone on the council, and of course the staff as well. And then, really in closing, I'm talking too much. But I do, again, I want to commend the staff. So what we talked about tonight was staff listening to the debate that the council's having in our meetings, these meetings, in our special meetings, and making recommendations based on what they're hearing from the council. That's how town manager, town council government's supposed to work. We're debating the policy, they're listening, and they're coming up with recommendations. So I commend the staff tonight for having the courage to come forth and say, look, we've heard what the council says, and here's my recommendation. We need more of that. We encourage more of that, and I hope it continues. So thank you.
I'm agreeable with that committee as long as both parties agree. We can agree to disagree.
Say you gotta wait till you're.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I'm done. Town manager report.
Yes, on that note, my recommendation is going to be, now that we've received the report and we can digest it, look at it, and then my suggestion was we'll receive their recommendations for implementation and look at that, and then get input from the people who are actually in the department. I think one of the most important things they stressed was the quality of our people and how much they want to serve the people of Enfield and what a good job they do at it. I think that's paramount. You can work on a lot of other little ills, but if you don't have people who are dedicated and committed to their job, it's all for naught. So I think that's one of the big takeaways from this evening, and I thank all of the employees of Public Works. I've worked with Doug, and I have a good relationship with him on the Town Safety Committee, and that's made up of employees and management, and we work together for the good of the community to try to make the workplace for both our workers and for our residents and citizens who visit our buildings safer. And then we've worked that through to actual recommendations for funding during the budget. I would approach this process the same way that we will have. We will look for a committee of that sort where everybody is represented. I think the most important thing is to not just ignore the report. It may not be perfect, but we're not going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We're going to take those things which are workable reasonable, and I think it's important to follow through on them, because too many times we've heard, we've done this consultant report, we've had this study, and then they gather dust in a closet somewhere and we never do anything about it. And I think we all lose credibility, and it's a waste of our time. I think this is a solid start. We'll get all of the input to see how practically we can make real implementations, cater it to what we know will be best for Enfield, and move forward on a plan that we think we can afford and attain in a time frame that's reasonable, and we will do it. And I think that's where we have to start. So that was my recommendation on how we'll proceed on Novak. In regard, I'll have any questions on the PAR report. Again, we've been looking at that very carefully. I think it's full of a lot of important information. Whenever you have questions, please let me know, or if you'd like any additions or clarifications on that. I don't want to forget, and Mr. Arnone does, and I'll answer that first.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say.
The PAR first, or?
Yeah, I think we should.
Sure. Yeah, you had a couple questions on the PAR. So on the senior center, we still have some very upset seniors out there on some of the programming issues. I just heard from one today, and I want to thank Jason and Mary for going out there and talking to them, because as difficult it was to get this complaint, and some of the things that were said in the complaint, one thing that was said was they're really trying hard. Jason and Mary are out there speaking to us, and that was the great part of the whole thing. So we need to get an update, if we could, in September. You know, once the summer's over, we get into the cooler season, because I see in the PAR, to bring it to the PAR, that the Saturdays are doing about 12 people. And I understand this is vacation time.
Right.
But with that being said, we need to track that and maybe right some of the issues that are plaguing our seniors down there. And I just want to make sure that was brought up. The town clerk's office too, Suzanne, thank you. I had to spend some time in documents, looking at some historical documents, and I see we have a digital. We're digitizing a lot of documents, and again, very few people know how the age of some of the documents we have at our disposal. And I was doing some research there. It was amazing to look at some documents from the early 1800s and on land transfers, and just some great stuff there. And you do a fantastic job. It was everyone was so helpful. And the truck wash last, fantastic news. Honestly, the truck wash has been waiting for. He just left. I bet you 30 years. So very happy to see that.
Well, it was exciting. I sent it out separately to you as well, because I knew you would be excited. We signed it on Friday, and then he put it in the PAR, but I couldn't wait, so I sent it out because I knew you would be happy with that.
30 years wasn't your fault.
No.
We had done something else for the last 30 years. Oh,
so you've been here for 10 years. So.
Yeah, you're happier than I, then maybe.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Actually, can we get a date? I saw that the ETV, the new system will have the crawler back at the bottom of the screen.
I'll look into that.
That's what I said in the PAR, and if we
Okay.
just kind of get a date, because I do get constant emails about the fact that the crawler's gone. And
All right. Bring the crawler back.
It's an easy. Well, this one it'll be accessible to.
You'll be a hero.
Right, I'll be a hero, but it's actually an easy way to get information.
All right.
You know.
Well, they're down in that room listening and watching, so hopefully they'll have an
Maybe
answer
they'll
for
come
me
down with an
before we leave
update.
the building.
Two crawlers.
Were you going to talk about South River Street?
I won't forget, Mr. Falk.
Okay.
I'll do it now so I don't forget.
98 Prospect Street, so is that property been taken over by Kelly Fredette?
We were waiting for Lori to come on board. I actually went and talked to the owner of Kelly Fredette, thanked him for his involvement in the community, told him that is a priority and we will be focusing on it. Yeah. I figured I'd give Lori one day to get oriented before we...
We want those
Get
guys
some
to take
air
it over.
conditioning.
I have a bunch of things I can ask Lori, but I won't. So
No air conditioning.
Sorry, sir.
All right, just in regard to the senior center, one of the things, Tom, when we went out there, and I knew that Mary and Jason would deliver, would be honest and communicate, and they're doing a very good job at that. We're going to go back again and listen after we've had some time to see how these things unfold. But again, I think even as the report from Novak, so we really need real data and we need facts that we can be guided by. So that's why they're keeping track of people who come, attendance, who's there, where we're using it, and we're doing it, and we're starting to do it in some other programs and policies in the town. So when the budget comes, as the mayor said, we won't be saying, well, maybe we should look at this. Hopefully we'll have the information for this budget. The the South Korean students. We had gone over to Bigelow to talk about issues there regarding the neighborhood and quality of life and their interest to help us with some development. They had mentioned that they had staying there some exchange students from Korea, and the mayor had decided, and we talked, it'd be nice to recognize them. So we went over to Wiznuntuk, did a presentation a week ago Friday. They were all there. There were 27 girls and one boy, and I said, well, he's a lucky fellow. I don't know how they picked, but he must have won the lottery. And they were very, very, very thrilled and excited. We gave them a town certificate, which Maya Matthews in my office did just a beautiful job on. We didn't want it just to be a piece of paper. We wanted it to mean something. She incorporated the South Korean flag, the American flag, the town seal for each student, and then we gave them a lapel pin of the seal of the town of Enfield, and then the school had a little luncheon for them. It was just a collaborative, wonderful event. I wish the whole council could have been there. Joe Mueller was there, the mayor, and Bob Crissati was able to come, and the vice chair of the Board of Ed, Charlotte Riley. So it was a very nice event, and I think it will be a nice, we obviously have a good relationship with Wiznuntuk, but I think anybody who hasn't been there should go and just see the beautiful renovation that was done. It's just a state-of-the-art class institution. They have a cafe there in the atrium. It's open, it's glass, it's welcoming. They have a bookstore, and I think it's just a great addition to this town, not to mention the incredible manufacturing program they have, which really looks to the future to give really high-paying jobs to those who perhaps don't want to do a four-year degree. And I think in this new economy and the focus on manufacturing that we're well poised to take advantage of that program. And I know it's already been recognized by the state, and it continues to be a great asset for our community. The South River Street Bridge, it's on the agenda for the short-term repair, but Peter makes reference to the 2021 replacement of the bridge. True, while in most of these matters where we get state money, there's a matching either 80, 20, 70, 30. In this matter, we have the funds in place. That does not have to go out to referendum. And we will hopefully be repairing it as we promised for the fall, and then that replacement will take place in 2021.
Does that include the bike path along the river and the bridge and the revision of the tunnel where it's pedestrian only? Because that's what the funding was for, a whole big project.
You know, there are and we'll have to talk about this. I'm going to be sending an email to the council. There are quite a few projects that sort of touch upon each other, from the intermodal to the gateway. The gateway project, which you have inquired about, is really, in the old days, it was a federal, you know, when they used to bring home the bacon, and they got us about $4 million, and the money was to go over the railroad tracks for fishing. We didn't think that was a wise expenditure, so we had to get permission from the federal government to re-designate it. So they did it for this bike path, really going from the Freshwater Boulevard down under the underpass in Wiznuntuk and a place on the river. It's about $4.4 million for that whole project. That is a 80-20 cost sharing. That would have to go on to the referendum if you wanted to do it. Tight time frame. The cost share for the town would be almost $900,000. We don't have that anywhere. So I think really you have to decide, and maybe it'll have to be in another venue. You'd have to actually have a public hearing on that by August 20th. I don't know that it's doable for this year, Mr. Falk, and I think you really have got to decide where that money would come from, our share, and have an appropriate period of time to explain it to the public as to what it was and whether or not they want to use that money. I think, and having been here way back when we got it, it was an earmark. I mean, that's when congressmen used to do all that, and they cut it out. I think we didn't want to lose the money, so we're trying to use it for something. There are a lot better things we could use it for than this project, but the federal government Department of Transportation has to tie it in to those railroad tracks. We initially, and I think it would have made great sense, to tie it into the bike path with Suffield and have a contiguous bike path right, you know, through a couple of towns. It would have been wonderful. Too far away, the nexus wasn't there, and they denied that change. So I know we want to take advantage of the money. Sometimes maybe you say no and you don't take it. If our share of almost $1 million is so high in this tough budget time that it's really that portion of the project only going to be from the pond to the river, is it worth $1 million of our money? So I'm not prejudging it. I know in the last couple of years I haven't heard much talk sitting here back up here again, but I think we're looking at it again. Lori, John Wilcox on the funding, but that's the thumbnail on that, Peter.
I didn't know if we didn't respond this year, whether we would lose the funding
I think
totally.
I think we've looked at that before. It's been sitting there for quite a few years. I think at some point they might pull it back. I can find the time frames. I just don't want to do it in haste and have the public reject it when you're doing JFK as well. And I really think you need to know where we're going to get that about $1 million from if we do decide to do it. I would rather try to work with our congressman to prevail upon them to be a little more flexible and let us use it for that's a lot of money. We could do a lot of great things with it, but not for perhaps the initial stated purpose that has to be connected to putting something over the railroad tracks. So we'll be looking at that.
Okay, thanks.
Would a walk-in bridge qualify for that?
Well, I thought of that, Mr. Mayor, yes. So
All for that. Bring it back to walk-in.
Over to Suffield.
And if there are no other questions. That's it for me then.
Closing again, you did a great job with the Korean foreign exchange students. You and the Dean of Students, Mr. St. James. Again, you recognized an issue. And it's amazing how quickly you guys put it together. And Maya and Deb did a great job with the certificates. I mean, again, if that's their little taste of America, then they got a pretty good taste of it. So you guys should be proud.
No formal report tonight.
Steal Tom and Donna's thunder, but any update, what you brought up at leadership over on Ellington?
Oh.
So I want to give you your issue?
Sure. So we received a complaint, both Donna and I, from a resident on Jewel Street that some liquid cow manure being sprayed on a grass field behind their houses. These tanker trucks are about 6,000 gallons each. The resident witnessed 4 of those tractor-pulled tankers dispersing this product out onto grasslands with no-till, and then the heavy rains come in. If you have seen the incline of this particular field, it's straight down. It's a sled field, and when that rain comes down, it washes it right into the Buckhorn Brook. The actual Buckhorn Brook starts in this area. So we've in further research. This is I did. I sent you an email with some pictures and some information on that. And my concern is the health of our brook, and this directly feeds to the Scannick River, which was one of the higher no swim zones for coliforms, and it concerns me. And I was wondering if you can look into this formally.
I can actually make a report, and Maria can chime in if she wants, because we convened a meeting this morning of land use people, the town attorney's office, and myself. We started on this last week. We reached out to the health department, to DEP, and to the Department of Agriculture. Many of these uses, and spreading of manure specifically, is exempted from local zoning under the DEP and agricultural statutes. However, if there is contamination or runoff into a waterway, DEP will look at it, and they are aware that complaint has been lodged, so they are aware of it. We know exactly where it's happened. Rick Rochelli has gone out there and taken pictures. We've spoken to neighbors. It seems as though they have done this in the past, but because of this unprecedented run of hot and humid weather, it hasn't dissipated. It only actually stopped the other day because of the rains. It has had very significant health effects on some of the residents in the neighborhood. So we're taking it very seriously. We know who the farm is. We know who they have leased the land from. So it is our intention to pursue it on every level. As I say, generally they're exempted under the law unless there's a nuisance, which this may be, or if it does contaminate a waterway. So we're looking at all those options, and we'll have a report for you later during the week.
And could you just keep in mind, too, as a point source, there's non-point sources that'll be like fertilizer from lawns, and there's point sources. So DEP does give, just like our water pollution control plant gets a permit. And in that permit, they have to follow certain rules, and I'm confused as to why DEP is not giving out permits to these in this case these mega farms. They have 3,000 cattle that literally stay in a barn all day, and they milk them in a milking. So it's not just cow manure anymore. It's also cow urine and milk product that gets all cleaned up, thrown in a tank, and then pumped out and spread on fields. So this is not your old cow farmer flipping it on the fields as a solid and then tilling it under.
It's not your grandfather's manure.
No,
you're right.
And the calculations are, and get ready for this, we're talking 14 million gallons a year that these farms can produce and spread throughout an area that is the size of maybe 3 towns.
And again, just so you understand, we did, because that was a point we thought was different and differentiated but according to the Department of Agriculture, this is their preferred method to gather all that in these artificial ponds, which they're doing, and then pump it out and spread it like this. So whether or not they actually understand the effect it's having in this kind of weather. So I think, perhaps just being good neighbors, that we can speak to them and just say, look, like for this week with this weather, perhaps you could abate it, and then we can look to the DEP to see if there's any violation in regard to the drainage. But the actual conglomeration of it, Tom, and the spreading of it is their best practices, which they want these farmers to do.
Well, they're actually pushing them to make this type of manure now.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing, but the right farm laws in the state of Connecticut are pretty strong.
Right.
Yeah, but they don't have a right to pollute our water. So we're going to see high coliforms in our own Scannick River where we can't. Right after a rain, ironically, right after a rain, coliforms get so high they shut swimming down in the Scannick River, all along the fields where this manure is being poured. This happens to the Broadbrook stream, it happens to the Buckhorn, it happens to a couple other smaller streams around Broadbrook, which is another high dispersal area. So I get it. I'm not against cheap milk, and that's what it's all about. But when it affects our water,
that is a violation of DEEP, though, Mr. Arnone. If it is going into the waterway and Buckhorn, they are looking at it. We have made them aware of it, and that is one area DEEP will act, even though they are exempt and we are a right to farming state. So.
Even without that, though, the bears do poop in the woods.
But not at 3,000 of them. Not 3,000 at a time in one spot.
I think on that note, I think you're off the hook. Any reports of the special committees? Item number 11. Yes. Councilor Ungar, then Councilor Bosco, then Ungar.
Okay. Well, with this Novak report, I'd like to start probably doing the same thing we did with public safety, is set a fixed date for meetings. And one of the things I've been trying to advocate for 10 years was trying to see if we can get our employees to tell us where our deficiencies are, because they do it every day and they know where we're wasting money. But the big major hurdle with that is, if we have to be able to ensure to our employees that if they do come up with something, that it won't be held against them. So someone's not going to be getting in trouble because they tried to make something that's going to save the town money, or either make something better or safer. So yeah, I'm really interested in getting started on this. I'd like to see if we can get Jonathan, to either break that down even more. I haven't seen the actual recommendations, but maybe we can break them in and start prioritizing what we feel is most important and start working on it.
Councilor Ungar, thank you.
I just wanted to say the subcommittee for public safety met at the end of July, and we're going to plan on meeting every month. It's going to be at the end of the month, of each month. Also, we were invited to go to the Hartford Police Department this morning, and we went and we saw some really impressive measures as far as security and shortening investigation times. And so we've got some things we're going to discuss in our subcommittee. So a lot of interesting things going on.
Cool. Deputy Mayor Suzak?
Unfortunately, with the rain, Joe's not going to give the report on facilities because he had enough rain to take care of. But on facilities, we did finally get our state approval for the 2 sections of the Henry Barnard roof, which you'll see later on in the agenda. But listening to the conversation here, and I haven't done the agenda for this Thursday, but I think we're going to add something where we're going to want to know, we knew our 2 worst roofs, and I think we need to know where all the leaks are. And it's unfortunate, but this committee meets every single week. And to Joey, that failed referendum is something that, we got the performance contract part passed, and we've been piecemeal working at the rest of it. And it's really critical when a town manager and a council bring a 10-year plan, and it encompasses a lot of things that need to be done, and it gets voted down, and we have to find a different way to do it. So, please have a little faith in us. Thank you.
Moving on, old business, item 12, town council appointments. Items A, 1, 2, 3 on page 1, we have none. Again, council appointments from page 2, 4 through 15, we have none. Do I have a motion to remove from the table item 16?
So moved.
By Deputy Mayor Suzak, seconded by Councilor Muller. All those in favor by show of hands? Opposed? So this is to appoint someone to the Joint Facilities Committee. A vacancy exists due to resignation of Stephen Twitzel. Reappointment would be till 6/5, well, actually, that date's outdated, so it'd be actually, I'm not sure, the reappointment would be to 6/5/2019, I would believe. That's the date that should be there.
Might have to amend that then.
Okay. I don't know if we have to amend that. Is that all right, Susan?
Yes, we'll just.
Okay, got it. So do I have a motion, a nomination?
I do. Sure. I'd like to nominate Bethany Olet.
We have a motion on the table of Bethany Olet.
Second.
We have a second by Councilor Sakala, seconded by Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Motion to close
We have a
nominations.
motion to close nominations by Councilor Falk, seconded by Councilor Denny. Is there any discussion on closing nominations? Hearing none by a show of hands, all those in favor? Those opposed, any abstentions? We have nine in favor, 0 against. Any discussion on the main motion of the appointment? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Arnone.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
4.
Councilor Sakala.
Bethany Olet.
And Councilor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
On page 3, we have council appointments 17 through 20. We have none. Item number B, under old business, appointments by the town manager, 1 through 10. None by the town manager. Items 11 through 15. By the town manager, any appointments? None. Item C, discussion resolution dissolving Enfield High renovation, still stays on the table. Item number 13, new business. We have no consent agenda in new business or appointments by either the council or the town manager. We have no appointments for P&Z appointed. And item D, again, this stays on the table, correct? Okay, this will stay on the table. Item 14, items for discussion. We have the consent agenda, items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Item 1 is these are all grants that we actually got more money than we anticipated for youth services, family resource, amendment of the resource officer, where we're just removing Fermi from the.
Correct, and they're going from quarterly meetings to annual meetings.
And then D4 is for you to enter into grant applications.
Correct.
So we've moved that to miscellaneous. So item 15, miscellaneous. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
By Councilor Denny, seconded by Councilor Falk. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none by a show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions? We have 8 in favor, 0 against. Now we are on miscellaneous, item E. Discussion resolution, request to transfer of funds for the South River Street Bridge repair of $100,000. I will get there in 1 second. So, I'll get there. You guys are ahead of me. I like to do everything old school.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It's refreshing.
Yes,
I have all the gray hair, and you're going to do it old
Yeah.
school.
So bear with me, folks. I apologize.
You're just with it.
Yeah. Where is it?
Page 54.
All right. See, I was ahead of the game. Now I'm behind the game. Aha, here we go.
Here we go.
Sorry about that, folks. I apologize. We have a resolution, be it resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfers hereby made. To CIP, Bridge Culvert Inspection, Fund number 31008328-545000 over $100,000 from CIP, Thompsonville Revitalization, account number 31008519-533900 over $100,000. Certified that the money is available on July 30th, 2018 by our Director of Finance, John Wilcox, approved by Chris Bromson, our Town Manager, on 8/2/2018.
So moved.
Second. Councilor Falk, seconded by Councilor Arnone. Chris, maybe just a little.
Just briefly, I think we're familiar with this, and there's a cover memo, but basically the state came in, DOT, in May 14th and said that the bridge was unsafe, recommended that we close it to travel. We did that. DPW moved very quickly. Had a consultant under contract with us by May 31st. They came up with plans for a fix by July 3rd. We submitted them to the DOT. DOT reviewed them. They don't give express approval, but they say that looks good, go ahead and do it. So that's what this money is being transferred for, to undertake those repairs. Then they'll come out and give it their blessing after, which is the most pre-view they will give us. But we're confident that it's in accordance with what they wanted done on the bridge. And then it will be under schedule to be replaced completely in 2021.
Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Falk?
I was just curious, under Thompsonville Revitalization, what the $100,000 was initially for.
It was for the pond, the freshwater pond improvements, which my understanding is they were completed, and this was excess money that was there.
So the pond has been dredged?
That's a separate, Jonathan isn't here, but we signed this year a separate contract, and the dredging is going to be taking place, and we had sufficient money in that fund, separate and apart. This was not for that purpose. That was separate under the Army Corps of Engineers. We were under order to do that, and it's going to be commencing shortly.
So you're not shorting the dredging?
No. This isn't coming from that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Again, I commend you and DPW for having the public hearing with the folks down there, and also moving very quickly on this.
No, I commend DPW. They moved very expeditiously on it, and they were very good with the outreach to the residents. I know it's been frustrating. I know it still will be frustrating, but at least they know the money's there, and the project will commence in the fall, and they'll be back in
Who
business.
says government doesn't act quickly?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, Enfield government did.
Yeah, agree. No further discussion. Roll call, please.
Councilor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Arnone.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
4.
Councilor Sakala.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Again, under miscellaneous, we have item F, discussion resolution, request of transfer of funds for Henry Barnard Roof Project, $308,000. Be it resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter that the following transfer is hereby made. From account 304-000-584-000, $87,134, BOE sinking unallocated contingency, to account number 304-000-593-010 of $87,134. Again, BOE sinking unallocated transfer to capital from debt account 31104-000-460984 of $220,866. Revenue grant funded projects, Barnard Roof, to again account 311-08745-545000 of $308,000. Grant Barnard Roof Construction Services from account 31104-000-4800015 of $87,134. Revenue grant funded projects, capital fund transfers in, certified that the money is available on August 1st, 2018 by our Director of Finance, Jan Wilcox, approved by Town Manager Chris Bromson on 8/2/2018. By Councilor Muller. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Suzak. Chris?
Mr. Mayor, I would like Chris Cycli to come up and Mr. Wilcox. They have some updated information in regard, and it may necessitate an amendment to the resolution in regard to the funding. As you well know, everybody's made a Herculean effort to get this done, from joint facilities, your town staff, the Board of Ed, and these two individuals. So it's moved at a very rapid pace to try to get this done in time for school. But Mr. Wilcox has an update on the...
Welcome, just name and title. Welcome, guys.
John Wilcox, Director of Finance. Chris Cycli, Construction Solutions Group, Owners Rep.
All right, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
You want to give a brief summary of the whole project, and then I'll go into mine?
Well,
Or
I think just an overview, quick, Chris.
Yeah, I mean,
what I brought you up for is, John, you've indicated to me that in regard to the total cost of dollars for the
Yeah, the
project
amendment.
and the amendment and the resolution may have to be adjusted. So really, that's the purpose, I think.
Okay. I do apologize for the confusion. I received an estimate from one of the vendors. I thought it was the complete cost of the project. It's not the complete cost of the project that was submitted to the state. So I do have an amended resolution I can hand out
right.
for you.
I thought it looked well.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Go ahead, sir. Yep.
So as John mentioned, the reason for this mix-up was in an effort to get this project moving a little bit faster. We contacted a vendor, a roofing contractor, who's on the state contracted bid list. They sent us a proposal for the work which totaled $308,000, which is a partial piece of the total project. The total grant is still $506,000, which is what we submitted to the state. So the allocation should be for the full project, and then we'll work from that.
Right. I thought that number looked low, 308.
Right.
Yeah.
And Jonathan caught it, so you want to bring it to your attention and make the amendment you see before you.
So any questions before I read the amendment? Or you want to have questions after I read the amendment? I'll read the amendment first, and then folks can ask questions. Again, amended to our to the resolution just read, resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made from account 3040000-584,000 of $148,298, BOE sinking unallocated contingency to account 3040000-593,010 of $148,298, BOE sinking unallocated transfers to capital from accounts 3104000-460,984 of $358,010 from revenue grant funded projects Bernard Roof, and fund 3110400-488,015 of $148,298 of revenue grant funded projects capital fund transfers into accounts 311-08745-454,545,000 of $486,408 of Grant Barnard Roof construction services in account 311-08745-533,800, $19,900 Grant Bernard Roof, other professional services, certification by our Director of Finance. The funds are available on August 1st, 2018, approved by Chris Bronson, Town Manager, on 8/2/2018.
So I'll make the motion to amend the original motion to what you just read.
So the motion to amend the original motion as just read by Councilor Falk, seconded by Councilor Denny. Any discussion on the amendment to the main motion? Any discussion? Anything further from you, gentlemen? So now we have to vote on the amendment first, then the right? Or can we do it all at once? So motion is now to vote as amended. Any discussion on the main motion as amended? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Sakawa.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Look forward to starting the project, so thank you. Item G under miscellaneous, discussion resolution, a resolution amending the site manager job description. Resolved that in accordance with Chapter 7, Section 2 of the Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council does hereby revise the job description for the position of site manager submitted on June 5th, 2018 by Don Homer Bouthier, Director of Social Services.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor, by Councilor Falk, seconded by Councilor Muller. Any discussion on the motion?
It was just an amendment. Damien is here in case there's questions, but it's just to update it as we're doing all job descriptions throughout the organization.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzanne.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Sakawa.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Item H, discussion resolution under miscellaneous. Resolution amending the policy for the disposition of town-owned surplus personal property. Whereas on January 5th, 2015, the Enfield Town Council, in parentheses, council passed resolution number 3002, adopting a formal policy for the disposition of town-owned surplus personal property. And whereas the current policy requires council approval for disposition of assets valued at more than $2,000, in parentheses 2,000, and whereas most assets dispositions referred to the council are of the routine nature and are transferred to the consent agenda, and whereas the council desires to efficiently manage staff time and resources, eliminate delays in realizing the value of surplus property, now therefore be it resolved, the Enfield Town Council does hereby amend Section 7 and Section 8 of the disposition of town-owned surplus personal property policy by increasing the threshold for council approval to $6,000, in parentheses 6,000, the remaining section of the policy, the remaining sections of the policy remain in full force and effect. The revised policy is hereby attached as Attachment A, date prepared on May 31st, 2018 by the Department of Public Works.
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Falk, seconded by Councilor Muller. Councilor Arnone.
So, I mean, it's just a list, right? We get a list, we look down the list, we approve or not approve the list. I don't see the big problem with with having to widen this amount of money for surplus property. It's a routine we do every year. I think it's kind of good for us to keep sight of what we're selling it for. I think that's reasonable at $2,000. I mean, I'll give you $3,000, but I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, the list comes to us, we see it. We know. I don't remember ever many questions. Actually, maybe Councilman Bosco did with. I think it was a fork truck we had for a number of years. You couldn't get rid of fast enough. And I agree with you too on that one. So, just as an example, I don't think it's a big deal, and I don't know why we're increasing it to $6,000.
And I can just add that Mike Slozik is here. He's the assistant director. They'd requested. I told him I'd give him an opportunity. You have the cover memo. I think it's contained. It's pretty exhaustive. I don't know that we need a big debate. You would ask for some follow-up on the list to show what it was. My inclination, having sat here for many years, is the council doesn't withhold their permission to do this, but they do like to peruse the list and see it. So I said you should have a diminished expectation of it being raised too much, but I let them bring it forward to you, and I think I understand Mr. Arnone's sentiment. If that's the sentiment of the council, fine. If there's more, you want to hear more, Mike is here.
So just curious, didn't this come out of the subcommittee? No.
No. You just did this in January, and they came forward with it most recently. I said it was unlikely, but I put it on the agenda. I don't want to take a lot of time.
So
I think for the reasons Mr. Arnone said.
Arnone's recommendation, would staff be okay if we amend it to $3,000? Is that a big deal, or anyone uncomfortable? I mean, I don't disagree with Councilor Arnone.
To me, either way, it doesn't matter. You know, the old way we used to do it, we were giving things away. This new way is an auction, and you're getting the most you're ever going to get out of it. It's not like, you know, do we just want to get rid of this stuff, or do we want to see? I at least like to see the list of what's going, but I don't. To me, it doesn't either. I would vote yes, and I don't care. I know that they're going to be responsible on getting rid of something, and so
how about
it doesn't really matter to me either way we do it. It's just the most important thing to me is some type of notification that we get on what they're getting rid of. I know they're not going to go sell one of our 2015s for $6,000. So, but it's nice to see what they are planning on getting rid of at least.
Well, as an ultimate compromise, you know, 2 to 6, and you go right down the middle, and I'll just give them
4,500.
Well,
4,500. I mean, again, they're trying to find efficiencies with our money, which we're asking staff to do.
Right.
And with the proviso with them there, I would just say that we would like
why 6.
we would like a list and a report as it.
Right. Come on up. Sorry.
And And to Joey's point, the list is what's important. The oversight of seeing the list. So, and I apologize, so 6 isn't a bad request as long as we're positive we're going to get this list.
Right, and that's what I would say. I mean, every
Christmas
time
list.
they're going to go sell, we should get a list.
So you're Santa Claus, he's going to make sure he's checking the list for you.
And no offense, but it's an oversight for us. 10 years, 15 years from now, that's part of the process. We have to make sure we have the proper oversight, so.
Then I guess just before you speak, are you asking to get, and Joey, are you guys asking to get the list prior to them selling it, but after they've gotten sort of a bid for it? Or are you asking to see the list after?
You're expecting what you're going to get for the bid, and that's where you're figuring that number. Either got to come to council or it doesn't.
Rick looks at prior sales.
Put your mic on, Mike.
Put it on.
So, sorry, name and title.
Rick,
Sorry.
Mike Slawzik, Assistant Director, Business Operations Manager at DPW. Rick Davenport, the Fleet Manager, typically looks at sales for whatever the thing is and looks at prior sales if he can find comps and makes an estimate. And he's usually pretty conservative. Even at the $2,000 level, we frequently would be sending things to you that don't quite make $2,000. The reason we've asked for this is we don't want to dump them on you continually, so we do batch them. And the more, at a lower level, if we've got something that's, we know is going to go through, we know you're going to approve, but it's got to sit there until we get enough to send to you. At a lower number, we can simply get the approval from the director, get the approval from the town manager, and sell it.
All right. Councilor Sakala, you have the floor.
I don't have a problem with the $6,000. I mean, there's always going to be a caveat that if you think that it's something that the council may want to look at prior, then you let us see it prior. But I don't have a problem with the $6,000.
Councilor, you all set? Sorry, Councilor Denny.
It's not going to be a detriment if we raise the price, is it? Get rid of the stuff? If it is,
we're not going to get less money for it. I mean, it's going to go on the same site, and in some cases, we may be able to time the options a little better.
I don't have a problem.
I
I'm on that committee, and Joey and I agree. The best thing ever happened is that junkyard that was back there years ago is almost gone.
I mean, if you want to get, I mean, we can certainly give you reports on what's sold.
And it does come to the director and to the manager's office to sign off.
Councilor Bosco?
What I'd actually like to see is give you the $6,000 limit, but anytime you have anything over that $2,500 or whatever number, just put it into the par. We're expecting to sell 3 vehicles this month.
Fair.
Here it is. This is what we're expecting for each one, and it's done. And then they can sell them more often and quicker without coming to a council meeting. Just add it to the par. And then no one can say they're not informed. And if someone sees something like a 2015 Kenworth for $4,500, they can say, whoa, I think that thing should go for more money. And that, I think, would take care of the burden on staff, and it would keep us notified.
Councilor Arnott.
And that would definitely satisfy my concerns. Again, it's not approving it that I'm worried about, it's seeing it. And it's just the oversight of us knowing what's leaving the town of Enfield and what it's leaving for. And that doesn't just go with Public Works. I mean, it could go with quite a few departments, but you just have the larger priced assets. A desk, a filing cabinet's one thing, but when we're talking, like you said, a Kenworth or a load of police cars, I think we really need that oversight. So I'll be satisfied with that if we can guarantee to make sure that par has anything over that 2,000 limit that's doesn't necessarily need our approval, but we should see what's going out of that department. I'm happy with that.
Yeah. And I think this is something you folks should take some credit for if we got a revenue stream coming in because you're out doing what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, I think that's the other P. Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that we're not just leaving stuff sitting there to die old death. You're out there trying to, gain a little additional revenue in a unique way. You folks should be, again, making sure it's in a par. That's the stuff I think folks need to see. So again, I appreciate the fact that you folks are thinking outside the box here.
Thank you.
Did a great job getting rid of a lot of that stuff over the course of the last couple of years.
Well, Rick, of course, is here, and he deserves the lion's share of the credit.
And you can keep it up. That's what we need from staff. We need these recommendations so we can debate them and see where we go forward. So I appreciate it.
Comfortable.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other
Thank you,
further
Mike.
discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Miller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco. 4. Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Under miscellaneous, item I, discussion resolution increasing the ROV election workers' rate per hour. Resolved that in accordance with Chapter 5, Section 14 of the Town Charter, the rates of pay for certain summer, seasonal, temporary, and other listed employees working in various departments throughout the town will be increased according to the attached schedule effective August 6, 2018, date prepared on July 27, 2018 by our HR department. By Counselor Sakala. Seconded by Counselor Denny. And I know, but this is something we passed in the budget.
Yes, it was in the budget,
All right,
but
go
the
ahead.
adjustments had to be approved by resolution.
So this is we've already passed this in the budget. Roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco. 4. Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Item J, under miscellaneous, discussion resolution amending the Director of Libraries job description. Resolved that in accordance with Chapter 7, Section 2 of the Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council does hereby amend the classification plan to revise the job description for the position of Director of Libraries, submitted on 7/27/2018 by Jason Neely, the Library Director.
So moved.
By Counselor Falk. Seconded by Counselor Muller. Any discussion? This
No,
again?
This was,
Yeah.
again, the financial part was already budgeted. This is just to bring it in accordance with the reorganization that Jason Neely now has the senior center under his watch.
Hearing no discussion, roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor
4,
Bosco is
yeah.
out.
He snuck out.
Right. Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
There's 8 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Again, under miscellaneous, item K, discussion resolution adopting the Deputy Director of Libraries job description. Resolved in accordance with Chapter 7, Section 2 of the Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council does amend the classification plan to create the job description for the position of Deputy Director of Libraries, submitted on July 27, 2018 by Jason Neely.
So moved.
Again,
By Counselor Falk, seconded by Counselor Muller.
again, this was part of the reorganization of the Department of Libraries approved, and it was budgeted for in the
You'll have to save
budget.
that speech for one more resolution. Hearing no discussion, roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco is out. Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Davis. Denny. Sorry.
I didn't want to answer for her. She's not here.
I don't blame you.
4.
Thank you. There's 8 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Under miscellaneous, item L, discussion resolution amending the Director of Recreation job description. Resolved that in accordance with Chapter 7, Section 2 of the Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council here does amend the classification plan to create the job description for the position of Deputy Director of Recreation, submitted on July 27, 2018 by Jason Neely.
So moved.
By Counselor Falk.
Second.
By Counselor Muller.
Again, this is the third, this one in the trio, and this is for Mary Keller, part of the reorganization for her involvement of recreation with the senior center under libraries now.
Hearing none discussion, roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Under miscellaneous item N, discussion resolution amending the Director of Public Works job description. Resolved that in accordance with Chapter 7, Section 2 of the Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council does hereby amend the job description for the position of Director of Public Works, submitted on July 27, 2018 by Steve Belinda, the Director of Human Resources.
So moved.
By Counselor Falk.
Second.
By Counselor Denny. Any discussion, Chris?
This came out of, Jack spoke to earlier, he was a member of this Charter Revision Commission, I was a staff liaison. There were changes in the charter made to the public Director of Public Works, and this now is being reflected in the job description because we are currently seeking a new Director of Public Works.
Any discussion from anyone? Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Falk.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco. 4. Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Under miscellaneous, item N, discussion resolution, a resolution regarding a salary and rate of pay for the network administrator, whereas the field of information technology is dynamic and competitive, and whereas to attract a highly skilled and qualified employee with the requisite education for the position of network administrator, the salary must be increased. Resolved that in accordance with Chapter 5, Section 14 of the Town Charter, the salary and rate of pay for the network administrator of the information technology department of the town is hereby increased from $56,000 to $79,000 on effective July 1, 2018, prepared on July 30th, 2018.
So moved.
By Councilor Falk, by Councilor Muller. Chris.
Yes, this is part of a reorganization that Mr. Russell submitted during the course of the budget, but also it has been tweaked slightly because since that time, Rob Sferaza has left. So Paul, who is here to answer any questions, met with myself and Steve Belinda to identify, given that change, what his real need was. He identified this position as being most important to have succession for the current network manager. The salary is increased to reflect what the municipalities are paying. There's no budget impact because it is within his budget to do this, but he identified this as a need going forward, and as such, it's before you. And he is here to answer any questions.
Do you have questions from anyone? So,
Yeah.
Paul, if you don't mind coming up.
Yeah.
Welcome, just name and title, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, good
Paul
evening.
Russell, Chief Technology Officer for the Town of Enfield.
Councilor Arnone.
So the most important thing I always look on these, budget impact.
Yes.
Can you explain why there is no budget impact?
So when we originally put the budget together, we had discussed a reorganization within our department where there was an open slot of a network administrator, and we were going to fill that in-house with our current people. So our project manager at the time went for network admin training and was going to be promoted into the network administrator position with the future planning that he would then succeed our current network manager as he's spoken about retirement within the next 2 to 3 years. And then also having the project manager position that we're currently working on the job description right now to revive, to get that in place, and also having a person within our department fill that. Currently, the project manager found another position at another company, left that, so it created the opening of the network administrator. So we still have that we need to fill. And within that whole change, we ended up creating about a $43,000 savings to the overall budget for the town and our department. So by doing the reorg and then looking to get those 2 positions filled, basically 3 positions are going into 2.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Paul, just a clarification. So this will have 2 network administrators until one retires, is that correct? Did you say
We
that?
have a network manager, and then this network administrator will come in and then be the expected replacement for the network manager in 2 to 3 years. But our network is so complex and extensive that we really need, with security being the forefront, we need somebody to come in, learn the ropes, and then when our network manager, Carl Merrick, decides to hang up his hat, this person can move in, and then we would look to hire another network administrator at that time. We had let that position stay open only due to austerity measures. This position was approved by ITPC back in July of 2017 as we requested it, and the Board of Ed agreed to increase the payment, for the IT fund to fund that position at that time.
So I know employees can leave anytime they want, but I mean, I have to admit, we pay someone, we train them for a position, and the individual doesn't stay. Yeah, I mean, I just hope with our training opportunities, maybe we're a little more, I don't know, stringent with who we You know, I don't know if you're positive. I'm just saying it
Sure.
rubs me a little bit the wrong way where we're training someone, and if that's the case, you know,
Well, and again, I mean,
they
the
can go. I
person.
mean, hey, if someone pays more, good for them. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not
I mean,
saying
you
that,
know,
yeah.
the person had a 50% increase,
Got it,
and
no problem.
so they found a opportunity to
Right,
take.
well,
That's
good for
sure.
them. No, I mean, no. Yeah.
You know, timing is what it is, right?
Any other questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Fall.
Thank you. 4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
So under miscellaneous, for item O, discussion resolution, appointing acting town manager. Be it resolved in accordance with the chapter 4-2, the Enfield Town Council. The Enfield Town Council does hereby reappoint Christopher W. Bronson as the acting town manager for a period of 90 days, effective midnight, August 28, 2018, through 11:59 p.m., November 25th, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
By Counselor Muller, seconded by Counselor Ungary. Any discussion on the motion? You have any words of wisdom?
No, it's been a very challenging 3 months, and I look forward to the next 3. 3 months? Did I say 6? Just felt like 6.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Fall.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Arnone.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Sakala.
I guess.
Counselor Denny.
4.
We have
You
9 in
you have
favor,
the
none
authority just like
against, and
before,
no
right?
abstentions.
That's, yeah.
She's upset the air conditioning's
That's
too
right.
cold.
It's freezing. Seriously.
Item 16, item 16 is right, what, the last meeting, right. Yeah. Public communication, I'd like to speak for the council at this time. Jack.
At least I remembered. Maybe my memory got rosemary. Maybe it won't.
Welcome, sir.
Jack Sheridan, 7 Buchanan Road. I'd like to think that maybe by allowing you guys to have somebody that doesn't live in the town be the town manager, that maybe we can talk Chris into taking this a full-time job. I think that would be the right thing, you know, as far as I'm concerned. Doing a great job, appreciate it, thank you very much. I really do encourage you to consider this full-time. The other thing is that I'm just going to say, we need to vote no on the JFK referendum. Build as new doesn't need to happen. It's so much money. It's $84 million. You know, they talk about, well, the state's going to take a part of that cost. Well, the state's broke. And I don't know what it takes to have people wake up to the fact that this is what happened to Detroit. It's what happened in Michigan. You spend the money that isn't there, and they go broke. They can't afford to even keep the lights on. The street lights, traffic lights, everything's out. You know, the taxes will go up. If you vote yes on the fix as new, the taxes are going to go up. They have to. And that's not just the town taxes, that's the state taxes too. The money comes from someplace. If we can repair and fix that building for $16 million, then that's what we should do. We shouldn't, I don't like the fact that because the referendum was voted down in the past, that we just didn't fix the buildings. That's not true. We actually put money toward the buildings. Did we do them as new? No. But can we come up? We always come up with the money to in emergency situations. And, you know, the state isn't funding its current obligations. So how the heck is it going to do an obligation toward a $84 million rebuild as new school? So I'm still here. I don't know how much more forceful I can be than to try and convince you to not spend money that you don't have. And that's not just town money, that's state money. So I hope that there's enough people out there watching this tonight, because what happens is, like I said last time, your house values, if you keep raising the taxes, house values go down, and you'll have to keep raising the taxes. It's a no-win situation because your revenue goes down. Trump proved that what happens when you lower taxes is revenue goes up. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Bob.
Bob T. Katz, 815 Woodgate Circle. I accomplished something tonight. I walked up the flight of stairs. I haven't been able to do that since September. But I had a coffee in one hand and the newspapers in the other, and I didn't even touch the railings. So that was a test. As far as Chris, I agree with Jack. There's been a profound change since Chris has been here. And you guys are doing a great job, but Chris is really setting the course where we should be going. And as far as I'm concerned, you should make him an offer he can't refuse. So, you know, living in 1945 is entirely different. You have no idea what it was like living in 1945. There really wasn't a lot of vehicles because they're all building vehicles for World War II. Up the street, the ragman would come on his horse and wagon. The vegetable man, the fruit man, the ice man. Guy across the street was making Salvo bleach. I don't know what he contaminated. We have no idea. And then what did the horses leave behind? Nobody cleaned it up. The dogs were going in the yards. Nobody cleaned it up. The cats, flies were everywhere. Monsanto was dumping in the Chicopee River dye. Oh, they were making yellow products one day, red products the next day. You go down to Connecticut River, there was no sewer plants anywhere. Nobody even thought of the idea. The Connecticut River and the Chicopee River were the sewer plants. They dumped, sewage went directly into the rivers. And then you had the smog from all the gasoline that was being burned. And then when the wind come from the west, and now you had the aroma of the Connecticut River and the Chicopee River. So we get concerned about some manure going into a sewer when we had to breathe and exhale all the time, and the smell was there. And you get used to it. Like if you have cats in the house, you get used to the smell. So we lived a long time. You know, the chief of police, they had to put legislation in because there were so many court cases that they made chief of police live in the town that they were chief of police. 25-mile radius. The legislature put that in because there were so many court cases. As far as bridges, you read the ads, like 320, 30 bridges are deficient in Connecticut, but there's 4,000 bridges. We're about 7%. You look at Rhode Island, they're 20% of their bridges are deficient. The Yankee Doodle Bridge in Fairfield is the #1 deficient bridge, but they got 1.5 million cars go across that bridge every day. There's no problems. So there's a lot of things that we have to compare it with. If you live in 1945, it was a whole different world. There's no pollution here today, no matter what it is. It's great. And I lived those times. So, and Chris, please stay.
Thank you, Bob.
Town council, please keep them.
Anyone else like to speak for the council? Declare public communications closed. Any councilor communications? Just Chris, one last thing. I'm sorry. Could we find a way to recognize those gentlemen to help arrest the individuals in the crime spree down in the southern end? I know the residents who stepped up and did their part as good residents. If we could find find a way of recognizing them, and it would be great.
Spotlight.
Yeah.
The mayor's spotlight.
Yeah. There's a good mayor spotlight.
And normally, Mr. Mayor, yearly when they do the police awards, they recognize citizens as well. So I'm sure they're being considered.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Councilor Fox and by Deputy Mayor Suzak. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 9 in favor, 0 against. Motion adjourned.